I'd give anyone who had any kind of negative thing. It was like, sure, like this is what you need to do, which is the thing I said, right, in a fundraising conversation with them. That's it. I wasn't aware of any other context. Like people say, well, but you knew that, one of the victims had come forward then. I was like, no, I wasn't aware of that. And by the way, it isn't anywhere in any of all of the emails have been made public. It's not in any of those things. I wasn't told that. It was just like, he has this problem with his Google search results. What is the normal answer? Go find a very credible journalist and do a long story.
I think the reason the Epstein scandal, beyond, as you rightly say, the justice for the survivors and victims, yes, the reason people are interested in it is partly because it speaks to a broader issue about the state of capitalism today. And it's really interesting because you're here, someone who spent, 40 or more years in capitalism. And I think I could describe you as a proponent of capitalism, someone who believes it's better than the alternatives, as Churchill said, of democracy. I think one of the underspoken stories or the elements of the Epstein scandal and horror is a feeling that basically rich people and the super rich live according to different rules, that the system is rigged in their favour. To what extent, based on what you have seen of the lives of the very rich, is that actually true?
Well, it's at least partially true, although it's not necessarily new, right? Like if you go back to human history, kings live by very different rules than peasants or, townspeople, and it's kind of the whole history of powerful people. Usual history is powerful men have different things. Part of, I think, our invention of modern society is to have a rule of law that applies equally to everyone. And that's part of the reason why this feels, more offensive when it's places of, you're doing crimes and you're getting away from it. And obviously we should do our absolute best to have rule of law apply equally across all people. Now, a wealthy person can afford a better lawyer, et cetera, et cetera. You can't eradicate it completely, but you put in a lot of energy. And this is one of the things I love about this country, Magna Carta, all the rest. No. The basic rights and dignity of every person. Now, of course, when that started, it was every man. We've since made progress, and now it's every person, not just every man, right? But that kind of thing I think is very important.
Final question. What's the big thing that our listeners need to understand, particularly about AI, about where the puck is going and what they need to do to get ready?
So what I will say to listeners is the same thing I say to my portfolio companies and entrepreneurs, which is don't build for how AI is today. Build for how you expect AI to be 6 to 12 months from now, because that's part of where the puck is going. Now, by the way, can anyone know with any degree of certainty where it is? No. There'll be some things that'll be better and some things that'll be not as good as you think. So you have to have a certain amount of flexibility in that. Same thing as individuals. Start using it intensely now. Use it for things that matter to you, not just rather than looking up on Wikipedia, I'll ask ChatGPT. Do that too, that's fine. Or take a picture of what's in my fridge. What could I make for dinner tonight? Fine, do that too. Make a sonnet for your kid's birthday. Great, do that too. But do it for things that matter to your work, that matter to how you operate. And you'll start learning, it's really good for this. Maybe in 6 months, it'll be better. But to have some sense and be engaged in that learning loop and what you're doing. And by the way, that's what I recommend to everyone. I recommend it to my parents. I recommend it to companies I work with. I do it myself. I cannot be more unequivocal in that recommendation.
Thank you for listening to The Interview. You'll find more in-depth conversations on The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including episodes with the entrepreneur Emma Greed, CEO of Otter.ai, Sam Liang, and First Lady of Sierra Leone, Fatima Bio. Until the next time, goodbye for now.
From the BBC, that was...
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, sitting in for Marcy Marcusa. Happy Friday. Right now, Winnipeg at the Forks, we're sitting at 14. Chilly start to the day, but we are warming up to a nice mild 24 degrees, at least in comparison to what we've had in the last week or so. Well, let's say hello to the wonderful team helping put together today's show. Abby Adiyemi Rami is our studio technician. Sierra Sanders is our studio director, and keeping an eye on your commute this morning. And Darren Morash is our YouTube producer. Let's also say hello to Heather Wells, who's in with a look at news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier says a mobile provincial supervised drug consumption site will open this month. Wabkanu hopes it eases the overdose crisis that's intensified over the spring. He says several factors that contribute to the drug crisis have improved. For example, 200 homeless people have been housed, and the province has opened more social housing, as well as the crime rate being down. So we'll hear more from the premier on that. And Wally Dowdrich says the Progressive Conservatives made up reasons to kick him out of a nomination race in southwest Manitoba. The former contender for the PC leadership hoped to run for the Tory nomination in Turtle Mountain, but this week the party revoked his candidacy. We'll hear why the Conservatives say they did that. We'll also hear Dowdrich's reaction coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Wally Dowdrich also joins us live today on the show after 7 o'clock. We're going to talk with him about all of that, so stay tuned for that. But this hour on the show coming up, the soccer ball at this year's World Cup will have a microchip in it, and CBC Sports columnist Scott Reguer is going to tell us more about that and all the other new tech playing a role at the upcoming tournament. Also, this coming hour on the show, Canada is one step closer to closing legal loopholes for people who distribute deepfake pornography, but there are still question marks around when new legislation might actually become law. So we're going to talk about that. But first up on the show, the highly successful on the ice but highly controversial off it. First on our program, we're going to hear from a sexual assault survivor and court advocate about Connor Hart's role on the Las Vegas Golden Knights following his acquittal last summer in the Hockey Canada sexual assault trial.
On Q. One of the biggest shows on TV right now is the HBO Max drama The Pit.
Baby Chinta.
Maybe you've seen it, and maybe you're convinced you're a real doctor now. You're going to hear from Catherine Lanassa, who plays charge nurse Dana Evans on that show, about how being on The Pit has truly changed her life.
Learned a long time ago. Quit feeling sorry for myself. Now come on.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. Treaty 8 First Nations say all options are on the table when it comes to pushing back against Alberta's referendum on separation. Several chiefs say they have serious concerns about the October vote and the impact it could have on their treaty rights. Julia Wong reports.
Separation is not happening. Separation of Alberta from the Canadian Federation is not happening.
Treaty 8 Grand Chief Trevor McCurdy is unequivocal that Alberta will stay in Canada. Fiery words as Albertans vote on a separatism referendum question this fall. McCurdy concerned about treaty rights.
Our treaties are not a myth. They're foundational documents. They're sacred. They're protected legally. And for the province to ignore that is contempt for our people.
His comments come after a public disagreement last week between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Manitoba Premier Wabkanu over the duty to consult. Matthew Wildcat, the Director of Indigenous Governance at the University of Alberta and a member of the Ermineskin Cree Nation, says the duty to consult exists for a reason.
The main reason why it's being brought up is that it means that there is the potential or real infringement on Aboriginal and treaty rights, Section 35 rights within the Canadian Constitution. We wouldn't have to have this discussion if there was going to be no infringement on rights.
At a press conference flanked by 3 other Treaty 8 chiefs, McCurdy demanded the province stop the referendum. If not, all avenues will be explored, he said.
That means stopping industry. That means maybe going out on the highways. That maybe means doing what we need to do to be heard.
In a statement, a spokesperson for the Premier's office tells CBC News the referendum question does not trigger any duty to consult, and it trusts Albertans will make the right decision for the province. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
That upcoming October referendum is also raising major questions about what independence would actually look like for ordinary citizens. Alberta separatists claim a breakaway province would guarantee dual citizenship and more travel options. But legal experts warn that it is far from true and say Albertans could lose their Canadian passports for a document no other country recognizes. Rukshar Ali reports.
it would have to be Canada's decision.
That's Gerard Kennedy, a law professor at the University of Alberta. He says residents in a theoretical Republic of Alberta would not be entitled to Canadian citizenship.
It would be a political and moral decision to consent rather than a legal obligation.
But many separatists in Alberta are banking on Canada cutting a deal. The Alberta Prosperity Project is one of the leading separatist groups. On its website, it claims once a Canadian citizen, always a citizen, and that independent Albertans will get dual citizenship, giving separatists, quote, more options, not less.
A Pandora's box has been opened, and there's going to be a ton of major challenges.
University of Ottawa law professor Errol Mendez says if the October referendum passes and a clear majority eventually vote for Alberta separation, then potentially years-long negotiations would kick in.
There has to be a discussion on what happens to the military assets that Alberta has, which is Canadian. What happens to the national pension, which is now in the trillions of dollars?
And Mendez says while dual citizenship isn't a given, neither is other countries recognizing an Albertan passport, which could make it difficult for people to travel. Ruxara Lee, CBC News, Calgary.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is taking a massive diplomatic gamble, bypassing Washington to appeal directly to Vladimir Putin. In an extraordinary open letter, Zelensky says Ukraine cannot wait around while the Trump administration is distracted by the war in Iran. He's calling for an immediate ceasefire and an all-for-all prisoner swap, challenging Putin to face him at a summit in a neutral country like Turkey or Switzerland. At the same time, though, Zelensky is throwing some shade in the letter by making reference to Putin's domestic failures and his age. It's a rare bipartisan rebuke of the White House. The U.S. House has approved billions of dollars in military loans for Ukraine. A group of 18 Republicans defied their own leaders, joining forces with Democrats to trigger a rare procedural maneuver that forced the vote. The CBC's Chris Reyes joins us now from Washington. Chris, this is a significant foreign policy blow for the Trump administration. What exactly is in the package?
I mean, John, it was decisive enough, with 226 members of the House voting in favor of the Ukraine Support Act. So this aid package includes money for reconstruction, financing loans to buy new weapons and other security assistance. It also imposes new sanctions on Russia. This goes directly against the president's position on how to deal with the war in Ukraine. He was very critical of any kind of U.S. assistance to the country under the Biden administration. Trump has also been known to lash out whenever Congress has tried to limit or constrain his ability to negotiate any deal, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. So 18 Republicans voting for this package at the very least says that some members of Trump's party are not afraid to vote against him or easily fall in line with his demands. The one Republican lawmaker said he didn't vote against Trump as much as he voted for the people of Ukraine.
Okay, Chris, what's next?
This vote now goes to the Senate, where the Republicans have a slim majority, and then it will likely face a veto once it heads to the president's desk. And then there's also the public lashing that could come. Trump has called the Republicans who recently voted against him on Iran grandstanders and unpatriotic.
Chris Reyes in Washington. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, John.
Albania is heading into a fifth day of protests over a planned luxury resort linked to U.S. President Trump's daughter and son-in-law. The project would be built near one of the Adriatic Sea's most sensitive wetlands, home to several endangered species. Megan Williams has the story.
This week in the Albanian capital of Tirana, cutout flamingos bobbed above crowds as thousands protested a resort deal they say has moved ahead with little transparency. The pink bird, one of some 200 species that could be put at risk with the development, has become a symbol of this citizens' movement. Some held signs that read, "Ivanka, keep your hands away from Narta." The estimated $2 billion project would convert an island and a stretch of coastline near the Voza Narta wetlands. It's linked to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, who told a podcaster last week they, quote, have 5 miles of beachfront. The developers say they'll move ahead responsibly, but Jamel Jerry, with an Albanian NGO that monitors the wetlands, says work began before the public saw permits.
We saw these machines going on the field. Every day they were putting concrete, gravel, and we asked for the construction permit and other documentation, but None of the institutions gave us nothing.
Prime Minister Edi Rama supports the project and says Albania must welcome investors as it pushes to join the European Union by 2030. And many Albanians want the jobs tourism brings. But anti-corruption prosecutors are now looking into questionable legal changes involving protected areas. And protesters say they will keep taking to the streets. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
The Trump administration is taking direct aim at Cuba's political elite. Washington has slapped fresh asset freezes on Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, his immediate family, and top members of the Castro dynasty. Speaking in the Oval Office, President Trump described the island as completely non-functional.
Look, it's a failed nation. The country is starving, and it's got no energy, it's got no oil, it's got no money, it's got nothing. It's got a beautiful piece of land.
The economic penalties drastically expand the decades-old embargo. And finally, as the world is put on notice to prepare for El Nino, there's some rare good climate news this week. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says a devastating 2-year period of mass coral bleaching has ended. But as CBC Science reporter Anand Ram explains, scientists warn the relief may be short-lived.
Off Colombia's Caribbean coast, Yerson Granados ties tiny pieces of coral to a metal frame made of rebar. Hands that used to fish these waters now helping build artificial homes to bring them back. The good news, scientists say, data shows that mass bleaching event finally ended last year.
I'm glad it's over. This was the most spatially extensive bleaching event ever recorded.
Emily Darling is a coral scientist with the nonprofit Wildlife Conservation Society. She says bleaching isn't a death sentence, but with El Nino expected to warm the Pacific this summer, there's no time.
If we're entering an era of near annual bleaching, recovery windows are closing.
And there are serious costs to communities that depend on these stressed out corals. Rashid Sumaila is an ocean and economies expert with the University of British Columbia.
Once you impact the habitat, you impact the fish and the life in the ocean, it just carries through to all of us.
Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Right now, hotspot in Manitoba is Emerson at 14, and Georges Island is the cold spot right now at 6. In Winnipeg, we're also sitting at 14, heading for a high today of 24. Coming up this hour on the show, the soccer ball at this year's World Cup will have a microchip in it. CBC Sports columnist Scott Reguer is going to tell us more about that and all the other new tech playing a role at the upcoming tournament. Also, this hour on the show, Canada is one step closer to closing legal loopholes for people who distribute deepfake pornography, but there are still question marks around when new legislation might actually become law. We're going to talk about that coming up right here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. 6:11 right now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier says he welcomes new ideas to tackle the drug overdose crisis in Winnipeg. Wab Kinew says his government has housed 200 homeless people, and highly intoxicated people, he says, can now be detained for up to 72 hours. He says a mobile supervised consumption site run by the province will start operating this month. And a judge has approved a proposed settlement in a class action lawsuit involving solitary confinement in Manitoba jails. The lawsuit alleges the province's use of segregation for adults and youth was negligent and breached charter rights. We're going to hear more about what the settlement is, the proposed settlement, coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That's Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Right now in Winnipeg, we're sitting at 14 18, heading for a high today of 24. And if you're looking ahead to the weekend, it's a very hot weekend ahead. We're talking about highs of 31 and mainly sunny on Saturday, and Sunday a high of 32 with a mix of sun and cloud. But it will dip down at least a little bit into the early 20s overnight. So a little bit of a reprieve, but a hot weekend ahead for much of Winnipeg, and a similar case for much of southern Manitoba as well. And even up north, we're talking about highs on Saturday of 27, but today your high in Thompson is at 24. We'll get your regional forecast more after 6:30. But right now, Sierra Sanders is in with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. It's pretty quiet out there here as folks start waking up on this lovely, or looks to be a lovely Friday so far. I mean, I don't like to... What was it, Wednesday, where it was really nice throughout the day, and then all of a sudden it hit like 4:30, and then dark clouds started rolling in, and then all of a sudden, but torrential downpour.
Yes.
So I'm timid to say, oh, it looks like such a nice day outside.
I know, and then all of a sudden you're going to get slammed, but it looks like we're going to be okay. So
I think we'll be okay. But so far, your commute is looking nice out there. Not hearing of any major issues or backups so far this morning. But if that does change throughout the morning, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'd love to hear what you are seeing out there, whether you were here in Winnipeg or anywhere else in the province. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, up next on the show, we want to start with a warning for listeners. This next story deals with the topic of sexual assault, so take care while listening. The Carolina Hurricanes were victorious in a 4-3 overtime win last night in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals. But throughout Game 1 of the series, Carolina Hurricane fans were relentless with one chant in particular. That chant, "No Means No," a statement about sexual consent, was directed at Canadian goaltender Carter Hart. Hart was one of 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior team, acquitted of all charges in a high-profile sexual assault trial almost a year ago. A woman known under a publication ban as EM said she was sexually assaulted for hours in a London, Ontario hotel room. The judge ruled the prosecution had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, within months of the acquittal, the Golden Knights signed Hart to a 2-year, $4 million U.S. contract, and now the team is tied 1-1 in the Stanley Cup Finals, and Hart is in the running for the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP. Kelly Favreau is a survivor of sexual assault and co-founder of Beyond the Verdict, a group formed to challenge injustice and harmful narratives in Canadian sexual assault trials, and yesterday she spoke with guest host Chloe Friesen.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Chloe. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm curious, how did you feel when clips of the "No Means No" chant from Game 1 started circulating online?
It was really refreshing to see, because that could have gone a couple of different ways. But hearing an entire arena of predominantly male fans sitting in that arena chanting that is screaming that the fans are demanding more accountability from the NHL. And the NHL promised a lot of accountability, and they haven't really delivered on it yet. So hearing the "No Means No" chant, that was really heartwarming. That was a really nice moment.
Carter Hart was acquitted. Why do you think the trial continues to follow him despite that?
Yeah, so when you have a high-profile sexual assault trial, and then you add our Canadian sport, you add hockey to it, all eyes are going to be on it. Right now, survivors are they're hearing that their pain doesn't matter. With all the hype around Hart being signed, Hart playing, the media focusing on his save percentage, his stats, and of course Howden on the team as well with his stats. It's really hard to take in, and it's different for everybody, and it's difficult for survivors to kind of process this with their own experiences, because many survivors lose jobs and relationships, their mental health suffers, financial security suffers, but we're watching these guys get, their return to glory story amplified, and that it's a really awful message to have.
And I'll mention that Brett Howden testified in this trial. That's why you bring him up here. How does it feel for you as a sexual assault survivor to watch Hart's success a year after this trial?
Yeah, it's only been a year, almost to the day, since the trial ended. I think we need to remember that the NHL isn't a right. It's an elite privilege, and nobody's saying that people shouldn't be allowed to earn a living, but survivors like myself, we're asking what accountability looks like when the reward is, fame and wealth, and now potentially having your name engraved on the Stanley Cup. So, I mean, we're starting to really question, is playing in the NHL simply a job, or is it a privilege that comes with extraordinary public influence and admiration? People are free to believe these players should be allowed to play in the NHL, and people are free to boo them and criticize them and question the message. But, that's part of living in the society that we do. But we're still talking about what accountability looks like when someone holds one of the most celebrated positions in Canadian culture, and that's a really hard thing to swallow.
Kelly, you're also a hockey fan. How have you and the people around you been approaching the Stanley Cup Finals?
It's funny. This morning I received a message from one of my friends. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia. One of my friends up island messaged me, and it's been kind of funny. I've had a lot of typical hockey bros that are messaging saying, I don't want to watch the final. I would rather watch the NBA or do laundry or do anything else. I can't support this. And it's because they're still trying to process, like, there was something deeply wrong when went on in that hotel room. And, whether it met the threshold for beyond a reasonable doubt and guilt is a whole other conversation. But guys are starting to reach out saying that this isn't right. And I think that that's a turning point in Canadian culture and in hockey culture. It hurt to watch the World Juniors last year, and I couldn't. And I'm a huge World Juniors fan. I watch that every year. But it really hurt last year having the TV on, and I didn't watch many of the games because of that.
You mentioned off the top here that it was refreshing for you to hear an arena where many men were chanting "No means no," and then you mentioned your male friend here who also couldn't watch. Are you seeing more support from men in the area of sexual assault?
I'm seeing more men come forward and approach me now saying this isn't right than I did have my own male friends approach me at the end of my own trial. And I think that's really saying something. I think that that's saying that, the culture is shifting. And again, regardless where you land on the verdict, I think a lot of people are seeing how EM was treated, and they're seeing that wasn't okay. And, this trial exposed a lot of behind-the-scenes hockey culture that, a lot of people know about, but now they're screaming about. So it's a little nice to see men starting to come around.
What could the NHL do, in your eyes, to build trust in the league?
That's a really good question. I think that after the Kyle Beach incident, several years ago now, the NHL promised that there would be accountability and that things would be different and that things would change. The Hockey Canada trial is arguably like the point where the NHL had a chance to show that they were holding people accountable and show that they are sending a message saying that they do support survivors of sexual violence, regardless of guilty verdicts or not. They had that opportunity, and I don't think they're going to get a better chance to show that they meant what they did after Kyle Beach. So I think the NHL has a long way to go, and I think the fans are going to be putting their money where their mouth is, as we saw in Carolina. They're chanting "No means no." I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward until the NHL actually steps up and does something.
Kelly, what message do you think it could send if Hart and the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup?
Oh, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, and every survivor is going to feel different. But I mean, since forever we've been told that accusations can ruin lives and careers, and now we're watching athletes connected to the most high-profile sexual assault case in Canadian history receive praise for their performance and be celebrated for their success. It's not about whether someone can play hockey and hold a stick, we need to start acknowledging the very real emotions that survivors experience when a story comes out that profoundly affected them is suddenly reframed as a sports story. And I think that's the message that's being sent right now.
Kelly, I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your perspective on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Kelly Favreau, a survivor of sexual assault and co-founder of Beyond the Verdict, a group formed to challenge injustice and harmful narratives in Canadian sexual assault trials. She was speaking with CBC's Chloe Friesen yesterday on Up to Speed. 6:22 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, next up on the show, the Carney government is trying to update the criminal code to include crimes related to the distribution of deepfake pornography. A bill called the Protecting Victims Act is being debated in the House of Commons, and Justice Minister Sean Fraser told MPs it's overdue.
We're seeing news stories about the rampant increase of AI deepfakes depicting people without their consent in intimate scenarios against their will.
To talk more about this bill, we're joined by Marco Villotti. He's the editor-in-chief at iPolitics, and he joins us now from Ottawa. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So just kind of give us the top line about this here. So what's the current legal landscape around AI-generated deepfake pornography in Canada?
Yeah, sparse, non-existent, you kind of take your choice. It's simply not mentioned in the criminal code, and as a result, it is kind of creating a bit of a legal gray area. So right now, the term intimate image is used in the criminal code, and it really is the catch-all, the term that you use when you're trying to, enforce prohibitions on, sending, explicit photos of someone without their consent or threatening to do so in terms of extortion. So that terminology, intimate image, is really important in the criminal code. But the way it's right now, doesn't make any reference to AI, so it's kind of confusing in whether or not those AI images would qualify as, you can acknowledge by the fact that they're AI, they're not actually a real photo, even though they may bear the likeness of the person. So this is why it's kind of this weird legal gray area right now.
So then what options do, say, police have right now to charge people who distribute deepfake pornography of someone without their consent?
Yeah, the police haven't necessarily held off on putting charges because of that legal uncertainty. I think CBC did a story just a month or so ago about how Ottawa police have charged two men who have operated, I believe, a video site with some pretty graphic AI-generated videos, and it remains to be seen how the courts decide. The reason, though, I say there's been uncertainty is earlier this spring, a Halifax man was acquitted of doing just that. With the judge saying, look, the law hasn't kept pace with technology. This technically isn't captured by the criminal code. So I think, the way it's written right now probably doesn't give much kind of certainty to victims who've seen their likeness be exploited by these by predators in AI videos and images.
So at least according to that judge, there seems to be some loopholes in the law. So how would this Bill 16, this Protecting Victims Act, close some of those loopholes?
Yeah, and it does so in a relatively simple but impactful way by ensuring that when we talk about intimate images for the purpose of the criminal code, we are talking about AI-generated images that bear the likeness of a person. This is usually done by kind of trolling social media, public-facing profiles, pulling images, and then feeding them into an AI tool. So they're saying when that happens, when that takes place, that qualifies, that transforms into an intimate image of the person, even though it's not really a photo of them. And as a result, it's captured by the criminal code.
So what's been the feedback to the bill from groups like, say, police and victim advocacy organizations?
Yeah, there's been some discussions and some criticisms over, I think, a bunch of other provisions in this bill. But when it comes to this section, no one's arguing that it's not needed. No one's arguing that, it's overreach. The concern or the criticism the government is facing is just on timing. Essentially, it took you so long, right? Mr. Fraser got asked this yesterday, and he kind of suggested that this is Parliament trying to keep pace with some rapid changes in technology. Although it's worth noting that Australia put forward something similar only in 2024. So can't say we're necessarily at the pack. Maybe we're more so trying to catch up with the explosive growth of AI.
So as you kind of mentioned there, it kind of feels like the government is kind of constantly playing catch up when it comes to addressing deepfake pornography, which is something we see a lot when it comes to creating laws around new technology. What do you think that the reasons are that we are having trouble keeping up? Is it just because it's changing so fast, or why?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think there's a myriad of things that are kind of working against this, and I think one thing that maybe Mr. Fisher wouldn't like to admit, but you probably wouldn't disagree if I said it was just the kind of political status that we've been dealing with. AI has kind of taken off over the past few years. We've had an election last spring. We've had a leadership change in the Liberal Party and the Prime Minister's office in early 2025. All that turmoil in 2024. Essentially, even if it was on top of everyone's priority list, I don't think there was much there wasn't much appetite or much movement going on in Parliament to make some pretty big substantial changes to the law. So I think this is a government that's trying to make sure that they're not falling too far behind. But on some of these things around AI, to your point, it's been proliferating for years. So it is interesting the government's finally taking action to do something now.
hmm And we've been kind of focusing on the deepfake aspect of this bill, but there actually is more going on as well in this bill. Can you just tell us more about what else is in the Protecting Victims Act?
Yeah, so it's really a multifaceted bill. Some of the other important changes include trying to address or curb intimate partner violence by adding a new offense called coercive control, and also ensuring that any crime, any murder deemed to be a femicide is automatically elevated to first degree. There's also some new language in there requiring the judges to consider other options other than just staying charges when it comes to cases that exceed the Jordan threshold. And then I think the most contentious part is around minimum mandatory sentences. There was a decision in the fall that invalidated the minimum mandatory for child pornography possession. Liberals are trying to restore that, but giving the courts a safety valve to allow them to differ from that minimum mandatory in certain circumstances. The Conservatives said, why don't you just use a notwithstanding clause? But that was rejected by the Liberals. So that was probably the most contentious part of the bill. But right now it looks like it's going to clear the House very, very soon.
Well, Marco, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That is Marco Villadi. He is the editor-in-chief at iPolitics. Well, 6:29 right now, and still to come here on Information Radio, we're going to get the latest look at the job market this morning. That's coming up on your business report. We're going to hear about what to expect. But right now, time for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 13 degrees right now, mix of sun and clouds, a seasonal high today of 24, and then we heat back up again for the weekend. Manitoba's premier hopes a mobile provincial supervised drug consumption site eases Winnipeg's overdose crisis. That crisis intensified over the spring. The supervised consumption site will open this month. Wabkanu says several factors that contribute to the drug crisis have improved. 200 homeless people have been housed, and the province has opened more social housing. Canoe says he's open to new ideas to address the problem, but won't consider providing a safe supply of drugs.
Whatever we do, I think, has to be done in a way that brings along broad public sentiment in our province so that we can make sure that effort is sustainable over the long term.
Canoe says the province will continue to target dealers who import toxic drugs to Manitoba. Wally Dowdrich says the Progressive Conservatives made up reasons to kick him out of a nomination race in a southwest Manitoba constituency. The former contender for the PC leadership hoped to run for the Tory nomination in Turtle Mountain. But this week, the party revoked his candidacy. The PC cite 3 reasons. Dowdrich made disparaging comments about current and former MLAs, used third-party contact lists, and refused to say he wouldn't pursue legal action against the party. But Dowdrich denies all the accusations.
They had no reason to not allow me to run other than the fact that they have a difference of opinion. That's their prerogative. I'm a conservative, and they're not.
Dowdrich believes he sold more memberships than his lone competitor in the race, Mark Custance, by a 4-1 margin. Custance is now expected to be the PC candidate in Turtle Mountain for the next Manitoba election. A judge has approved a proposed settlement in a class action lawsuit involving solitary confinement in Manitoba jails. The lawsuit alleges the province's use of segregation for adults and youth was negligent and breached charter rights. The administrator for the class action says the proposed settlement fund was $129 million. It could see awards starting at $3,000 for adults, $9,000 for youth. The judge approved the settlement agreement in a Winnipeg courtroom yesterday after hearing from people affected by the segregation, among them a now 22-year-old who says what he experienced as a teen in custody will haunt him for the rest of his life. The class action administrator says the province agreed to resolve the case without a trial, but denies liability. Well, some Canadians are going to be getting a little bit of extra cash today with the arrival of the new Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit. Formerly known as the GST HST credit, the affordability assistance will go to roughly 12 million Canadians with one-time amounts depending on the size of the household, ranging anywhere from $267 to a maximum of $533. This one-time top-up payment is worth 50% of the annual benefit, and regular quarterly payouts will also rise 25% over the next 5 years, starting in July. A team at Britain's University of Cambridge has used artificial intelligence to develop an antigen for a new vaccine. The scientists say this is the first time a vaccine's main component has been designed completely by AI. The vaccine, which is undergoing human trials, may provide protection for a wide range of viruses. Researchers say it will remain effective even if those viruses mutate. At this point, the team is working on developing vaccines to tackle COVID, the flu, and Ebola viruses. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, it was a Winnipegger for the win.
They score! Seth Jarvis!
That call on ESPN is Winnipeg's Seth Jarvis scoring on a power play in overtime, giving the Carolina Hurricanes the win against the Golden Knights last night. 4-3 was the final, and that Stanley Cup final series is now tied at 2 wins apiece. It is Jarvis's first goal in the series. Mark Stone, also from Winnipeg, and Brett Howden from Oak Bank, both scoring for Vegas. Game 3. So there it is, 1 win apiece. Game 3 goes tomorrow night in Las Vegas. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Go Seth Jarvis. What a year he's having, eh? Wow.
I imagine that, right? And what an impact Manitoba had in that game because, as I mentioned, you've got Jarvis scoring the win from Winnipeg, but on the other team, Mark Stone scoring and Brett Howden with 2. So that's 4 goals in that game, all scored by Manitobans.
So at the end of the day, no matter who wins the Stanley Cup, Manitoba comes out on top.
Exactly, as we always do.
As we always do. True that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. Let's take a look at your regional forecast right now across the province. We'll start here in Winnipeg. Right now, we've actually dipped down to 13 degrees. We're going to be warming up to 24 today. Now, looking ahead to the weekend, going to be a really sunny, hot weekend here in the city. 31 is the high tomorrow, mainly sunny. And then Sunday, the high is 32. Heading out west to Brandon, right now, you're sitting at 12, mainly cloudy right now. You do have a chance of showers today and even thunder showers, about a 30% chance or so. You are going to be warming up to 25 and also a hot weekend ahead, both highs of 31 on Saturday and Sunday. But on Sunday, you do have about a 30% chance of showers. Dauphin right now, similar forecast for you. You're cloudy right now, sitting at 12, warming up to 24 today, 30% chance of showers as well. Slightly cooler weekend for you than the rest of southern Manitoba. Right now, your high on Saturday is going to be 28. And Sunday, you can expect some rain and a high of 24. Thompson, you're sitting at 10 right now. Warming up to 24 today. Dipping down to 10 overnight. Going to be quite chilly. But then warming up to 27 tomorrow up north. Mix of sun and cloud. But then expect potentially some rain on Sunday with a high of 22. About a 40% 50% chance of showers. Well, let's check in with Sierra Sanders, who's keeping an eye on your commute. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey. It is pretty quiet out there. Haven't gotten any calls on the commuter line, so to me it sounds like things are moving along pretty well so far on your morning commute. But if that does change here, I'd love to know what you are seeing out there. You can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. Well, Crystal Ramlakan is here with your business report. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Corey.
So we're going to be getting the latest look at the job market this morning. So what are we expecting?
Well, economists expect employers added 10,000 positions last month after losing nearly 18,000 jobs the month before. And they also predict the unemployment rate will hold steady at 6.9%. So this will be the last major economic data release before the Bank of Canada's interest rate decision next Wednesday. And we know the key interest rate affects things like variable mortgage rates, which can affect affordability. And staying on that note, some Canadians will notice extra money hitting their bank accounts today. So roughly 12 million people are expected to receive one-time top-up payments through the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. So previously known as the GST-HST benefit, a single adult with no children could get up to $267, and a couple with 2 kids could receive a maximum of $533. And this was one of the federal Liberals' flagship affordability measures and is aimed at supporting lower income households with the rising cost of living.
So staying on the cost of living here, there are warnings we could see even higher oil and gas prices soon, though.
Yes, that's right. So executives and analysts say energy prices will likely rise significantly as reserves deplete and the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. So Brent crude is around $94, $95 US a barrel right now, but experts say it could balloon to $150 or more in the coming weeks. And that would be largely due to fading hopes for a US-Iran deal to reopen the strait, as well as unchanging demand in some markets and reserves that are quickly drying up. So President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested the U.S. and Iran are close to a deal to reopen the strait, through which about 20% of the world's oil is shipped. But Iran has disputed those claims, and experts say the price of oil hasn't really been matching the circumstances. They actually say prices should be higher right now and are artificially low. Now, members of the International Energy Agency did agree to release 400 million barrels of oil from their emergency reserves. And experts say those reserves have done their job, but that's not going to last forever. Analysts warn prices are likely to remain higher through to at least 2027. And that's partly because of the difficulty of reopening the strait when that does happen. Things don't just run smoothly right away. Now, Canada and the U.S. have so far been spared from the worst consequences of the strait's closure, as most of the oil that goes through it is destined for Asia. And higher oil prices do bring some benefits to the Canadian economy because we are a large oil producer, but that is limited by how much consumers are affected. And higher gas prices could lead to worsening inflation and could pressure central banks to raise interest rates.
Switching gears now to the latest news in stretchy pants. Why is the big Canadian brand Lululemon cutting its outlook?
Well, that's because of its showdown with the company's estranged founder, which weighed on the retailer's first quarter, it says. So the Vancouver-based apparel maker says it experienced spikes of negative commentary in the media and on social media platforms. And the company says it's likely its net revenue for this fiscal year will be down as much as 1% from the year before. And the business named the battle with its creator, Chip Wilson, as a factor in all of this, and also from recent product launches that have kind of failed to wow shoppers. So Lululemon had a proxy contest with Wilson, who has been outspoken in his criticism of the brand, and there have also been questions about the composition of some of its products. And the company was also a large beneficiary of the now defunct de minimis exemption, which allowed it to ship packages duty-free across
across the Canadian border into the U.S. So the business has also been hit hard by tariffs and competition from other newer, fresher brands. And so with fewer people coming to its stores and website to buy workout clothes, the company has also leaned more on discounting to try to drive sales, which has hurt its bottom line and its reputation as a premium brand.
Well, thank you very much, Crystal. Have a good weekend.
Okay, thanks, Corey. You too.
That's Crystal Ramlacan with your business news. Well, as mentioned, sunny weekend ahead for much of Manitoba. Time to get out, enjoy it, put on that hat, slather on that high SPF, right? Well, maybe not if you're a Gen Z. Some people in their teens or 20s are seeking out the sun, chasing a high UV index to maximize their exposure and comparing tan lines with their friends. A survey commissioned by the Canadian Dermatology Association indicates Gen Z is tanning despite knowing the cancer risk. CBC's Ann Panman spoke to some teenagers out seeking the sun at Kitsilano Beach in Vancouver about their habits.
I'm just looking to be more bronze, like a shade darker, not too much though. And I just use tanning oil. I don't really use sunscreen, which is bad. Like getting a tan just makes me feel like I look better.
The tan I'm hoping to get this summer is probably an all-around kind of brownish tan. I think it definitely ups my confidence because you're more confident when you think you look good.
I'm 17 and I'm hoping to maybe go olive today. Some SPF sunscreen. I don't have 60, but 50 is good enough.
Yeah, like I feel like when I'm pale, like I just look kind of like depressed. And like, yeah, like the whole tan is like summer vibes and everything. So like when I'm darker, I just feel better.
It feels more confident, I guess. And it makes me like have more colors since I'm like more pale.
So are you worried about the risks?
Yeah, low key, but gotta do what you gotta do, I guess, to look good.
I don't really burn that easily because I'm from Asia, so I'm not that worried, but I still want to put on sunscreen because my grandparents had melanoma from working before, so I'm a bit more aware of being under the sun.
What do you say to people who are warning you all the time about don't tan, don't go out in the sun, all that?
Like, it's great that they're warning me, but at the same time, it's like my life, and I feel like I can just do what I want to do.
Like I told my mom, like, thank you for your concern, but it is my body, so I get to do what I want. And my sister also gets a tan, so I mean, like, she's like not that much older than me, so I get to do what I want.
Yeah, my grandma has like skin cancer, so she always like warns me about that type of stuff. She's like, she always has like an umbrella when it's sunny out. Yeah, like that'll be me maybe when I'm older, but for right now, like I'm okay.
That was CBC's Ann Panman speaking to teenagers about their summer sun-seeking habits at Kitsilano Beach in Vancouver. Well, still to come here on Information Radio, the soccer ball at this year's World Cup will have a microchip in it. So we're going to hear about what that microchip is going to tell us in terms of tech. That's coming up just ahead. But right now, we do have some time for some music from her 2025 EP. This is Winnipeg's Brandy Vesna with Old Fashioned Values.
Coffee is best with an early morning sunrise. Ain't nothing like singing hymns at the Sunday church. If you're gonna do something, do it right the first time. Count your blessings and always keep your word. Pass down things you learned and what you know. 'Cause those old-fashioned values will make you grow. Like Grandma and Grandpa, living what they're teaching. You reap all the seeds you plant when it comes harvest season. Kinda like a shooting star you wish on before it's gone. Or the things you know you're gonna miss, so you try to hold on. Pass down things you learned and what you know. 'Cause those old-fashioned values will make you grow. for peace and pray for a little rain. Make the most out of the hand you dealt. And there ain't nothing wrong with raising a little Cain. Like Grandma and Grandpa, living what they're teaching. You reap all seeds you plant when it comes harvest season. Kinda like a shooting star you wish on before it's gone. All the things you know you're gonna miss, so you try to hold on. Pass down things you learned and what you know. 'Cause those old-fashioned values will make you grow. Make you know why you work for what you earn. There's some things that you can't buy, you just gotta learn. Like Grandma and Grandpa, living what they're teaching. You reap all seeds you plant when it comes harvest season. Kinda like a shooting star you wish on before it's gone. Or the things you know you're gonna miss, so you try to hold on. Pass down things you learned and what you know. 'Cause those old-fashioned values will make you grow. Those old-fashioned values will make you grow.
That is Winnipeg's own Brandy Vesna with old-fashioned values.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
It looks like this is maybe a one-day blip when farmers across the province need hot and dry.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take.
In general, it's harder to find a job even if you're educated.
I'm Marjorie Dowhouse. From 12:15 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
When I was 5 or 6, my parents gave me seeds and helped me plant them. That was probably close to 70 years ago. And here I am still gardening.
It just brings everyone together. Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you weekdays on CBC.
Well, 6:49 right now on 89.3. You're listening to Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, next on the show, the FIFA World Cup is almost upon us. And when play begins next week in cities around North America, you'll see technological advancements at play too. In fact, it'll be the highest tech sports event we've ever seen. And joining me to discuss it is Scott Regehr with CBC Sports. Good morning.
Hey, Corey.
It's wild. It's just a ball and a bunch of people with feet, but there's so much technology going on here. So what new technology stands out for you at this tournament?
Well, the ball. The Trianda, as it's called, is actually much more than just a ball, Corey. It is a sphere-shaped computer. 3.5 years in the making. The Trianda is embedded with a computer chip that will send 500 signals per second to sensors placed all around the World Cup stadiums. The data will then be used by coaches, referees, and broadcasters alike. Want to know precisely how much bend was on that Messi free kick, or how hard Ronaldo struck his penalty attempt? With the technology inside the Trianda, now we're going to know. Trianda, by the way, Corey, means three waves in Spanish, which is a nod to the three countries hosting the World Cup, as well as the wave of new talent we're going to see at this tournament.
So then how will this new technology be used to improve how games are officiated?
Well, there will be a record 1,200 plus players involved at this tournament, and every one of them, Corey, will go through an AI-driven body scan. FIFA's 3D imaging takes just 1 second to capture a player's exact body shape, and the resulting avatars will then be used, along with the data collected from those super smart Trianda balls, to improve every element of the game. Want to be sure to the millimeter that the goal someone just scored on your team was offside or not? Or that an opponent might be guilty of a handball. History shows us, Corey, it matters.
Maradona just walked away from Huddle then. Valdano. And Maradona gives Argentina the lead. The England players protesting to the referee. At what point was he offside? Or was it a use of the hand that England are complaining about?
It is arguably the most infamous moment in soccer history. During the 1986 World Cup quarterfinal, Argentina's Diego Maradona leapt above English keeper Peter Shilton and punched the ball into the net. Argentina went on to win that tournament, and Maradona cemented his place as one of the game's greats. Meanwhile, the English, well, they've been crying foul ever since. What might have been, Corey, had 3D avatars and computer chip balls been around, not to mention video assistant referees? There'll be no such injustice. At least there shouldn't be at this World Cup.
Not all of the technological advancements we'll see will be on the field, though, right?
Yeah, this summer's World Cup will not just be the biggest sporting event we've ever seen, but is expected to be the most gambled upon as well. And FIFA, Corey, is making it easier than ever to wager. FIFA will facilitate real-time gambling by partnering with analytics and AI companies to distribute ultra-fast official match data to licensed sports books. This is a big problem, according to Declan Hill. An Ottawa native, he's now an associate professor of investigations at the University of New Haven. Hill has a book coming out next year that looks at the true extent of sports gambling.
The issue with sports gambling is comparable to the opioid epidemic because what we're dealing with now is something called frictionless gambling. Back in the day, you would have to go somewhere and speak to someone if you wanted to place a bet, be it a racetrack, be it a casino, be it at its very worst at some dodgy bar. You would have to go to speak to your illegal bookmaker. Those conditions don't exist anymore. It's all done on your mobile phone. It's all done with simple taps of a button on your mobile phone. And it's done with micro betting. So it goes into your brain and it gives you dopamine highs every few minutes, which is deeply, deeply addictive.
Now, FIFA, Corey, obviously has a different take on the dangers of sports gambling. For the second World Cup in a row, it's going to have a betting company, in this case, Greece-based Betano, as an official tournament sponsor. And in a first-of-its-kind move, FIFA is also partnering with ADI Predict Street. That's an Abu Dhabi-based company that predicts World Cup results using historical data that FIFA itself is going to provide them. So, just as we're seeing in other sports, there's a deepening of ties between FIFA and the gambling industry.
We also know that there's a link between sports betting, online sports gambling, and match fixing in leagues like the NBA and Major League Baseball. So how much of a concern is it expected to be in the World Cup?
Well, Declan Hill says it's a massive concern. His book, The Fix, Corey, was a bestseller on the topic back in 2008. In that book, Hill looked at how many national soccer federations don't pay their players. Now, they're supposed to take cash directly from FIFA and put it into players' bank accounts, but in many cases, they don't. That led, for example, to Ghana's national team boycotting training sessions at the 2014 World Cup until their national governing body paid them. There are 48 countries involved at this summer's tournament, and they're not all made up of millionaire players. So some could be tempted to manipulate results. And if you're wondering what the Canadian government's doing about it, Declan Hill says not very much.
I know match fixers that immigrate to Canada because what are the cops going to do? They've never laid a single investigation against a match fixer here in the country, unlike in the United States. And it boggles my mind as a Canadian why, when we legalized sports gambling a couple of years ago, why we just didn't take half an hour to just amend our criminal code, put in a paragraph about corruption and fraud in sports events and make it illegal. But we don't.
And Hill's not alone in his concern, Corey. Jeremy Luke, the CEO for Sport Integrity Canada, wants to go even further.
Declan's raising one particular issue that should have been addressed when the federal government legalized single-event sport betting, which is an amendment to the criminal code to make match fixing or competition manipulation a criminal offense, which we would certainly support. But what's even more important is that the government goes beyond that and ratifies the Macklin Convention.
So the Macklin Convention, Corey, is the only legally binding international treaty designed to prevent, detect, and punish match fixing. Much of Europe, as well as countries like Morocco and Australia, have signed on to it. In the meantime, FIFA is relying upon, you guessed it, more technology to fight the problem of match fixing. It's employed the Swiss firm Sport Radar to monitor global betting markets to flag and report unusual patterns, and the computer chips inside those World Cup balls are meant to help with it all.
So fascinating. Thanks so much for this, Scott.
You betcha.
That is Scott Reguer. He's a producer with CBC Sports. His radio special, See the Rise, Canada's World Cup, is available right now on the CBC Listen app. Well, 6:57, and still ahead on Information Radio, we're going to hear from a former Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party leadership candidate about the Manitoba Tories disallowing him to seek nomination in Turtle Mountain.
What else can you do, right? Keep your head up, keep your chin up. Yeah, I'm very positive about what Manitoba can do. And I believe that there's great things in Manitoba's future. We just got to fight for it.
Wally Dowdrich joins us live after 7 o'clock right here on Information Radio. But right now, let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's Premier hopes a mobile provincial supervised drug consumption site will open this month. Will help to ease Winnipeg's overdose crisis. Wab Kinew says several factors that contribute to the drug crisis have improved, such as 200 homeless people being housed and the province opening more social housing. A judge has approved a proposed settlement in a class action lawsuit involving solitary confinement in Manitoba jails. The lawsuit alleges the province's use of segregation for adults and for youth was negligent and breached charter rights. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. Well, still to come here also in this next hour on the show, some people in southern Manitoba say they're fed up with the amount of ticks they're seeing this year. We're going to hear from them coming up, and why an expert says the conditions are just right for a big boom in the tick population. Looking at the commute, pretty quiet overall so far, but if you do see something going on out there on the roads, you can give Sierra a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093. It is 13 degrees right now in Winnipeg at the Forks, heading for a high today of 24, with a very sunny and hot weekend ahead for much of southern Manitoba. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio. We'll be back after World Report. Stay tuned.
On the Current, daisy curtained vintage trailer with little blinking twinkle lights.
It is a yellow 1970s camping trailer that drives around Manitoba, and its mission is to collect stories from people talking about how great their neighbors are. How a Winnipeg man is fighting social isolation and bad vibes. It's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. 3 men extradited from Scotland will be in an Ontario court today for what is expected to be a resolution in the killing of an Owen Sound restaurant owner. Sharif Rahman died nearly 3 years ago after chasing down customers who skipped out on their bill. Philip Lishanuk reports.
I made tandoori chicken for them.
Adnan Hussein was a cook at the Curry House in downtown Owen Sound, about a 3-hour drive northwest of Toronto. He told CBC News that Sharif Rahman confronted 3 men who'd skipped out on their bill.
I saw Sharif was running behind them. He was able to stop one of them.
44-year-old Rahman died from his injuries from that confrontation. What's being described by the court as a resolution is expected today.
The accused were not from Owen Sound. Others brought violence to our community.
Owen Sound Mayor Ian Boddy praised the police for the work tracking down the 3 accused to Edinburgh, Scotland, and returning them to Ontario to face charges. 25-year-old Robert Evans was charged with manslaughter, while his father, Robert Busby Evans, and his uncle, Barry Evans, were charged as accessories. Boddy, who has a background in criminal law, expects some kind of plea deal.
We need to rely on the expertise of the court and be satisfied with whatever decision they make.
But he says whatever the outcome, the community is still reeling from the loss of Raman nearly 3 years ago. Body says the Curry House continues to operate in Owen Sound and is run by Raman's wife, who receives strong support from the community. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Treaty 8 First Nations say all options are on the table when it comes to pushing back against Alberta's referendum on separation. Several chiefs say they have serious concerns about the October vote and the impact it could have on their treaty rights. Julia Wong reports.
Separation is not happening. Separation of Alberta from the Canadian Federation is not happening.
Treaty 8 Grand Chief Trevor Mercurdy is unequivocal that Alberta will stay in Canada. Fiery words as Albertans vote on a separatism referendum question this fall. Mercurdy concerned about treaty rights.
Our treaties are not a myth. They're foundational documents. They're sacred. They're protected legally. And for the province to ignore that is contempt for our people.
His comments come after a public disagreement last week between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew over the duty to consult. Matthew Wildcat, the Director of Indigenous Governance at the University of Alberta and a member of the Ermineskin Cree Nation, says the duty to consult exists for a reason.
The main reason why it's being brought up is that it means that there is the potential or real infringement on Aboriginal and treaty rights, Section 35 rights within the Canadian Constitution. We wouldn't have to have this discussion if there was going to be no infringement on rights.
At a press conference flanked by 3 other Treaty 8 chiefs, Mercurdy demanded the province stop the referendum. If not, all avenues will be explored, he said.
That means stopping industry. That means maybe going out on the highways. That maybe means doing what we need to do to be heard.
In a statement, a spokesperson for the Premier's office tells CBC News the referendum question does not trigger any duty to consult, and it trusts Albertans will make the right decision for the province. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
The Ochis First Nation is taking its fight straight to Ottawa after a crash killed 4 people, including 2 young girls, last week. Community leaders say the gravel road southwest of Edmonton has been a deadly hazard for decades, and they want the federal and provincial governments to step in. Lina Al-Sadi reports.
It's bumpy, corrugated, ruddy, wet, and soft in spots.
Tammy Burke's voice quivers as she drives on the unpaved township road 42-5A. She commutes often on it, in and out of Ochis First Nation, southwest of Edmonton. A crash here last week left 4 people dead and 4 more injured. Among those killed, 2 girls aged 5 and 6 traveling in an SUV, and 74-year-old taxi driver Dwayne Hamill. Phyllis Whitford is chief of Ochis.
We could have prevented this accident if that road was cleaned up, it was paved. Clearwater County has responsibility on that road. The province should also have responsibility.
People in the community, including Ochis Council members, say they have long advocated for funding from all levels of government to improve safety. Reeve Jordan Northcott of nearby Clearwater County says they can't afford to do it alone. But another similar route in a neighboring First Nation was upgraded when provincial and federal governments got involved.
Clearwater County does have their 1/3 and has had for a significant amount of time the 1/3 funding to upgrade that road. Different levels of government that have been brought in to hopefully accommodate that 1/3 partnership to complete this project. It's just unfortunate it hasn't made it there yet.
RCMP are still working to determine what caused the fatal crash. Meantime, representatives from Ochis are planning to travel to Ottawa to advocate for the safety of the road next week. Lina El-Sadi, CBC News, Ochis First Nation in Alberta.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is taking a big diplomatic gamble, bypassing Washington to appeal directly to Vladimir Putin. In an extraordinary open letter, Zelensky says Ukraine cannot wait around while the Trump administration is distracted by the war in Iran. And he's calling for an immediate ceasefire and an all-for-all prisoner swap, challenging Putin to face him at a summit in a neutral country like Turkey or Switzerland. But it is an unusual diplomatic request, with Zelensky also taking direct aim at Putin's domestic failures and his age. The U.S. Senate has approved $70 billion to fund border security after an all-night standoff over a multi-billion-dollar payout fund for Donald Trump's allies. The bill secures long-delayed funding for ICE and the Border Patrol for the next 3 years. But Democrats are slamming the final package after Republicans blocked restrictions on an unrelated $1.8 billion settlement fund, potentially leaving the door open for those tax dollars to be used to compensate January 6 defendants. Chinese leader Xi Jinping is preparing for his first trip to North Korea since 2019. Xi will meet face-to-face with Kim Jong-un next week as Beijing tries to shore up its influence over its isolated neighbor. The surprise summit comes amid growing concern in China over North Korea's tightening military alliance with Russia, including Pyongyang sending troops to fight in Ukraine. Analysts say Xi is making the trip to ensure Beijing does not lose its leverage over Kim. And the Trump administration is taking direct aim at Cuba's political elite. Washington has slapped fresh asset freezes on Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, his immediate family, and top members of the Castro dynasty. Speaking in the Oval Office, President Trump described the island as completely non-functional.
Look, it's a failed nation. The country is starving, and it's got no energy, it's got no oil, it's got no money, it's got nothing. It's got a beautiful piece of land.
The economic penalties drastically expand the decades-old embargo. It follows an aggressive American fuel blockade launched earlier this year that has already choked off the island's energy grid. And finally, Albania is heading into a fifth day of protests over a planned luxury resort linked to U.S. President Trump's daughter and son-in-law. The project would be built near one of the Adriatic Sea's most sensitive wetlands. Megan Williams has the story.
This week in the Albanian capital of Tirana, cutout flamingos bobbed above crowds as thousands protested a resort deal they say has moved ahead with little transparency. The pink bird, one of some 200 species that could be put at risk with the development, has become a symbol of this citizens' movement. Some held signs that read, "Ivanka, keep your hands away from Narta." The estimated $2 billion project would convert an island and a stretch of coastline near the Voza Narta wetlands. It's linked to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, who told a podcaster last week they, quote, have 5 miles of beachfront. The developers say they'll move ahead responsibly, but Jamel Jerry, with an Albanian NGO that monitors the wetlands, says work began before the public saw permits.
We saw these machines going on the field. Every day they were putting concrete, gravel, and we asked for the construction permit and other documentation, but none of the institutions gave us nothing.
Prime Minister Edi Rama supports the project and says Albania must welcome investors as it pushes to join the European Union by 2030. And many Albanians want the jobs tourism brings. But anti-corruption prosecutors are now looking into questionable legal changes involving protected areas. And protesters say they will keep taking to the streets. Megan Williams, CBC News, Rome.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. Well, coming up this hour on the show, do you feel like there's more ticks this year? Well, one expert says you're probably right. She'll tell us why we're seeing a surge in ticks this season. Also this hour, summer is almost officially here, and for some lucky students, that means time to earn a little money. But finding work can be hard. We're going to talk to one of the hosts of CBC Street Sense about the struggle young people are facing. But first up this hour on the show, a former Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party leadership candidate, Wally Dowdrich, has been told he can't seek nomination in the Turtle Mountain Ride. And coming up, we're going to hear from him about the decision live right here on Information Radio. Stay tuned. 7:11 right now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's premier says he welcomes new ideas to try to tackle the drug overdose crisis in Winnipeg. Wab Kinew says his government has housed 200 homeless people, and highly intoxicated people can now be detained for up to 72 hours. Kinew says a mobile supervised consumption site run by the province will start operating this month. A judge has approved a proposed settlement in a class action lawsuit involving solitary confinement in Manitoba jails. The lawsuit alleges the province's use of segregation for both adults and youth was negligent and breached charter rights. We'll hear more coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Let's take a quick look at your weather right now here in the city of Winnipeg at the Forks. It's 15, heading for a high today of 24 with a mix of sun and cloud. It will dip down to a much chillier 15 overnight, but the weekend ahead is going to be very hot. 31 is the high tomorrow, mainly sunny here in Winnipeg. 32 is your high on Sunday with a mix of sun and clouds. Out west in Brandon, you're at 12 right now. You are going to be 25. Later today is your high with about a 30% chance of showers and even a chance of thunderstorms as well. And up north in Thompson, you're sitting at 12 right now, heading for a high of 24, clearing with a fairly sunny but also potentially rainy weekend ahead. 27 is your high tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. But then Sunday, your high is 22 with about a 40% chance of showers. Sierra Sanders is in now with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. It feels like a very Friday commute. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
You mean like a bunch of people booked it off and aren't driving?
Yeah, might be. That might be the case, or folks are working from home or working from the cottage these days. I don't really know what the shift has been, but it's pretty quiet out there on the roads. Haven't gotten any calls on the commuter line. So to me, it sounds like your commute here in the city, at least, and the surrounding area is looking pretty good. But if that does change and there is something that pops up on your drive, I'd love to hear about it. So give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, as you've been hearing in the news, former Manitoba Progressive Conservative leadership candidate Wally Dowdrich has been barred from running for the party as a candidate. On Wednesday, the Manitoba Tories announced Dowdrich cannot seek the party nomination in Turtle Mountain. And Dowdrich finished second to Abhi Khan in a close leadership race last year. In an email to Dowdrich, the party said the decision to bar him as a candidate now was made based on 3 factors. Here's what it said in that email. Quote, 1, repeated disparaging comments regarding current and former Progressive Conservative MLAs. 2, the use of third-party membership and contact lists in connection with party activities. And 3, refusal to provide written assurance that any threatened litigation involving the leader, MLAs, and other party officials has been withdrawn and will not proceed, unquote. The party also said, quote, Mr. Dowdrich was subject to certain conditions during the vetting process of which he was aware. After repeated advisement, those conditions were not met. His application was not entitled to proceed, unquote. Wally Dowdrich says all of these allegations are false, and he joins us now over Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, so what was your reaction when you first found out that you were barred from running?
You know, my first reaction, I was actually having coffee with Mayor Swanson and Boissevain in the middle of the Turtle Mountain riding and thinking that we've got 1 week to go. We just handed in our memberships. We overwhelmingly outsold our competitor. I've been working for it for 6 months. And during the meeting, I was told we need to go. There's something going on. And apparently everybody knew except for me. And this was sort of a blindside that occurred. So we walked out to the truck and started making some phone calls and found out through the MLA that represents the area that, have you received this email? I said, not yet. No, we're just in a meeting. And we got out and found out that the party made these allegations, which are categorically false. And matter of fact, I've spoken with several of the caucus members since that time, which is only a couple days ago. And they explained to me that they were being told that I refused to sign a document that would state that I will not sue the leader, the party, and certain, and any MLAs. And I'm thinking, sue for what? Maybe there's an opportunity out there, but I don't know what I'm suing for. I believe that this has all been put together last minute to bar me from running simply because the party apparently doesn't like people like me, conservatives.
So you think this was politically motivated?
As you said in your prologue, that I was vetted twice, once for the leadership race and then once for this. If there was any signatures to be had or any papers to sign, I signed all of them willfully. I went through the vetting process, the interview, and everything was good. I did 6 months of hard work, selling as many memberships as I could. And just a few days after the memberships were submitted, we realized then, we've outsold my competitor probably 3 or 4 to 1. And then just a week or so before the vote was to occur, we are told that we're no longer allowed to run for the party.
So you talked a little bit about the third reason there, about why the party decided, or this says that you are barred from running. I want to talk about the first reason as well. So the party says there's been repeated disparaging comments regarding current and former progressive conservative MLAs. What do you think the party is referring to there? You do say it's false, but why do you think the party said this? And what do you think it's referring to?
Well, it's very ambiguous. There's 3 allegations made there, and there's no examples of the allegations. So I would have to ask the same question of the party. What are the allegations? There's one that I said disparaging remarks. Well, back during the leadership campaign, I repeated what a former premier said, and that was that we have some lazy MLAs. And that's not disparaging. That's just saying what I think was accurate. So I would just say, flesh it out. Tell me exactly what supposedly what the accusations are, because some of the accusations, the sentence structure isn't even cogent as far as how they're communicating themselves. It seems like there was some sort of a cut and paste. And a bunch of people in a back room came up with this idea. Again, I would just go back to the fact that I went through the vetting process twice, I might add. Once for the leadership, which was, very all-consuming, and then again running for Turtle Mountain, which I still want to run for Turtle Mountain, but I think that ship has probably sailed.
Well, let's talk about that.
Sailed. Go ahead.
I just want to talk about the vetting process there. We can talk a little bit about your future there and what you plan to do. But you do say so. They do say that you were subject to certain conditions during that vetting process, which you were aware. What were those conditions? Because they say those conditions weren't met.
Again, I don't know what they're saying by conditions not being met. I would say this. If I was lying, I would say, then why am I supporting the party? Why would I be their biggest donator the last year, where I personally raised about $32,000 at the AGM? Why, when called upon, why would I buy the old 23 Kennedy residence for the party and give them $600,000 when the party was starving for cash? Why would I do all of these things and at the same time sue the party? I would ask your listeners, ask the question, if this is true, then why would I be doing all of these other things to help the party? I've done nothing but try to help the party, and this is the return that I get. I spoke with several caucus members here in the last few days. They've reached out to me, and they said that, is it true that you were offered a letter and that you refused to sign it? They're saying that I wouldn't sue the party, and I would say categorically, no. I've not been offered a letter, or I've not been offered a document to sign. It's just bizarre or weird that the party would put that forward. And again, the suspicion is that this was done right after the memberships were collected, and they looked at it and they said, there's no path forward where Wally isn't going to win, so we can't have that. We don't like people like Wally. He's rural, he's Christian, he's conservative. We don't like that kind of candidate. That's what they're telling me.
But I did ask specifically the conditions during the vetting process. Could you just give us some clarity what those conditions were?
All of the vetting, it was basically getting background checks for, child and adult abuse, criminal background checks, financial background checks, social media posting, everything that I did during the leadership race, I did it again. And then you have a committee of about a half a dozen people, some MLAs, some former MLAs, some of the board members of the party. And then there's a litany of signatures for documents, basically saying I'm going to abide by the rules. All the candidates signed the same documents. Again, why would they claim that they served me with a document that I refused to sign? I just say again, and I'll say it 10 times, it's categorically false.
Okay, and that second accusation of using third party, resources for memberships. What do you say to that?
I don't understand. Again, that's going back to the wording on that. I don't understand what they mean by that. But if third-party memberships, like let's say, for instance, if there was Manitoba Ag Society and I was looking at the membership and calling these people up and saying, hey, would you support me by buying a membership? Of course. I mean, that's what politicians do. You're trying to get as broad a support base as possible. If you're using a church or a Elks Lodge or whatever it might be, I mean, you want to get as much support as possible. And that's what smart politicians do. And that's what I did. I went to everybody I could and got as many memberships signed up as possible. And I got great support from the people in Turtle Mountain. I mean, that's why when this occurred, I was in the middle of the riding doing exactly what I should be doing, and that is campaigning and talking with people that support me, because the vote was only 8 days away at that time. And this is why this has occurred. They can say, the party can say whatever they want to say. And I've spoken, again, with several caucus members. There's problems that are occurring, and this is just one manifestation of the problem. That is, the problem is that the party has lost its core values and is no longer supported by the people who call themselves conservative. If you want to vote Liberal, if you want to vote NDP, by all means, I mean, this is the way it should be. But there should be a home and a place for conservatives to be able to say, we want to support this party. And then it's up to that party to make the pitch to the rest of the province to say, hey, we want to increase business. We want to increase freedom. These are the things that conservatives stand for.
So are you do you plan to still be a member of the PC party going forward? What's your relationship going to be going forward with the party?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I'll be a member, or I'll be a member of the party or of the conservative movement long after Mr. Khan takes that aircraft ride to Ottawa and is selling life insurance. I will be here because this is my home. I've lived in Manitoba my entire life.
And do you plan to run again for the PCs? To try to run again?
I'm going to leave all the options open, and apparently that door is closed. But we'll see what my options are going forward. I love this province. I really do. And I love the people of Turtle Mountain. I love that riding, and I love Southern Manitoba. I love Northern Manitoba. I believe that we can do great things with our resources. I just believe right now that you have a dysfunctional legislature all across the board. It's kind of like, if you're old enough, you remember the program Hogan's Heroes, you got Colonel Klink, and I would say, Abby is maybe Colonel Klink, and Robert Hogan is Wab Canoe, and they're playing this game, and it's kind of like, it's funny, but it's, this is the people's business. The legislature is to do the people's business, not for personal catcalls and criticism back and forth like what we're seeing right now. Frankly, I used to be a very partisan person, I guess, when I was younger. But now I'm looking at it and I'm saying, man, I'm nonpartisan because I hate the bickering and the division that you see on this level in the people's house.
Yeah, well, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time this morning, Wally. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Wally Dowdrich is a former Manitoba Progressive Conservative leadership candidate. He's also a Churchill hotelier and ecotourism operator. The Manitoba PC Party said in a statement, quote, all potential candidates seeking a nomination with the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba must meet certain eligibility requirements. Mr. Dowdrich was subject to certain conditions during the vetting process of which he was aware. After repeated advisement, those conditions were not met. His application was not entitled to proceed. Mr. Dowdrich was informed on Wednesday that he was no longer considered a potential PC candidate in the Turtle Mountain riding, unquote. 7:26 right now. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1. I'm Corey Funk in for Marcy Marcusa. And let's turn now to morning sports with Paul McGowan. Good morning.
Good morning, Corey.
So let's start with the Bombers. They open their season tonight in Calgary.
Yeah, lots to watch in these early days of the season for Winnipeg. New players, new offensive coordinator in Tommy Kundell. And then, of course, the big question, can Zach Collaros stay healthy? Can he rebound from what was a down year when he was on the field? And, Corey, there's so much talk at this time of year about excitement and potential and hope. Collaros, though, was very honest about his own feelings as we close in on tonight's opener.
Oh, you're always anxious, or I am at least, before you get on the field. And just want to get the first hit out of the way, and then you're kind of locked into the game. But yeah, once that whistle blows, you're playing football again. But that build-up is something that I'll probably miss someday. It's not fun, but I probably will miss it.
Love the honesty there from Collaros. And the good news for him and for Bombers fans is that the build-up is almost over. It's an 8 p.m. start tonight from Calgary.
Now let's go to hockey, where Winnipeg's own Seth Jarvis was the hero last night in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, Seth Jarvis, the hero, but there was a lot that had to happen to put him in that spot. Carolina first had to claw back from a 2-0 third period deficit. They had to rebound from a late goal by Vegas that tied the game at 3 and sent things to overtime. And after Jarvis scored that OT winner to tie this series at 1, he was asked what helped start the Carolina comeback. And he pointed not to resilience, not to past playoff success, but to the Carolina fans who decided to go shirtless in the third period.
That's the best thing about them. They're crazy. It's an amazing atmosphere to play in, and to have people like that. It's not warm in there, so to take your tarps off and kind of get the crowd going and get the energy going. That's kind of what kickstarted our whole little press there in the third.
Now, I know that shirtless fans are not new to sports venues, but there is a trend right now, particularly in Major League Baseball, for entire sections of fans to go tarps off, as they say. And so in the third period last night, the Carolina video board posed a question. That question was, tarps off for the boys? And dozens of fans responded. And apparently, as a result, we now have a 1-1 series. Game 3 of that series goes on Saturday.
Whatever gets the job done, hey?
Whatever gets it done.
Well, let's end on tennis and some history that was made at the French Open.
Well, we've been talking all week about Maya Walinska, 114th seed at this French Open, barely able to afford accommodations in Paris. She is now through to the French Open final.
I feel like I'm in the bubble, I would say. I don't know what's going on. I'm just very happy to be here. I honestly don't know what was going on in my head. I was just in such a shock, joy, surprise, so many emotions, I was outside top 100, and now I'm in the finals of a Grand Slam, so I feel like it's a big thing. So it's hard to process it, I guess.
Walinska, the first ever qualifier to get to a French Open final. We'll see if she can finish writing this Cinderella story. She takes on number 8 seed Mira Andreeva tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks, Corey.
That is Paul McGowan with your morning sports. Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30, 14 degrees. Mix of sun and clouds today. It's going to be beautiful. A seasonal high of 24, and then things really start heating up for the weekend. Manitoba's premier says he welcomes new ideas to tackle the drug overdose crisis in Winnipeg. Wab Kinew says his government has housed 200 homeless people, and highly intoxicated people can now be detained for up to 72 hours.
Solutions that we've implemented have made progress in some areas, and we'll continue to be there to do things like the supervised consumption site that have never been part of the toolbox before in Manitoba.
Canoe says a mobile supervised consumption site run by the province will start operating this month. He's not calling for a public health emergency related to drug overdoses. Canoe says the recent declaration related to HIV helps address some broader issues also related to overdoses. A contender for the Manitoba PC leadership last year says he has done nothing wrong. And yet, Wally Dowdrich has been kicked out of the Turtle Mountain nomination race. The PCs say they have 3 reasons for their decision. Dowdrich made disparaging comments about current and former MLAs, used third-party contact lists, and refused to say he wouldn't pursue legal action against the party. Dowdrich denies any wrongdoing.
I've got some reputation because of my former leadership status, but I didn't take it for granted. I went into the riding, I worked very hard, and I sold a lot of memberships. And this party has decided to disqualify me for no reason.
Dowdrich says he sold 4 times as many party nominations as his lone competitor in the Turtle Mountain nomination race. The vote was expected to happen next week, but is now likely an acclamation for Municipality of Two Borders councillor Mark Custance. The Carney government is set to follow through on one of its affordability promises, the Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. Starting today, an estimated 12 million Canadians will get a one-time benefit cash boost worth 50% of the annual benefit. That translates into as much as $267 for single adults and $533 maximum for a couple with 2 children. The regular quarterly payouts will also rise by 25% for the next 5 years, starting in July. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is taking a big diplomatic gamble, bypassing Washington to appeal directly to Vladimir Putin. In an extraordinary open letter, Zelensky says Ukraine cannot wait around while the Trump administration is distracted by the war in Iran. He is calling for an immediate ceasefire and an all-for-all prisoner swap, challenging Putin to face him at a summit in a neutral country like Turkey or Switzerland. But it is an unusual diplomatic request, with Zelensky also taking direct aim at Putin's domestic failures and his age. The co-founder of artificial intelligence developer Anthropic warns about the rapid advance of the technology. Jack Clark says the most advanced AI systems could soon escape human control. He says some of his own AI models are reaching the point where they could develop without the need for human input. Clark says AI development needs to slow down.
You want the option to be able to take your foot off the gas and put your foot on the brake, right? Right now, it's like the AI industry has a gas pedal, but it doesn't have a brake pedal in the car. And what we're saying is we want to do some of the work required to build that brake pedal so we in the world have an option.
Clark says the impact of AI should be determined by societies, not private companies. And this just in, Statistics Canada says the economy added a surprise 88,000 jobs in May, pushing the unemployment rate down nationally to 6.6%, partially offsetting employment declines over the first 4 months of this year. That news just breaking right now. You can hear the latest on that story and other news coming up on World Report at 8. And it was a Winnipegger for the win.
They score! Seth Jarvis!
That's the call on ESPN. Winnipeg's Seth Jarvis scoring on a power play in overtime to give the Carolina Hurricanes the win against the Golden Knights last night. 4-3 was the final. The Stanley Cup Final Series now tied at 1 win apiece. It is Jarvis's first goal in this series. Mark Stone, also from Winnipeg, and Brett Howden from Oak Bank both scored for Las Vegas. Game 3 goes tomorrow night in Vegas. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News desk. Let's take a quick look at your weather across the province this morning. In Winnipeg, we're sitting at 15 right now. We're heading for a high today of 24 with a mix of sun and cloud. And this weekend is going to be a scorcher. Mainly sunny tomorrow with a high of 31, and then Sunday in Winnipeg, high of 32 with a mix of sun and cloud. A maybe a little bit of a rainier weather ahead in Brandon. We're at 12 right now. You got a 30% chance of showers and even thunderstorms today with a high of 25. Tomorrow, high of 31 with a mix of sun and cloud. And then Sunday, 31 as well with about a 30% chance of showers. In Dauphin, you're sitting at 12 right now. It's cloudy. Also a chance of thunderstorms today and showers, about 30% chance with a high of 24 today. And then tomorrow, your high is going to be 28 with a mix of sun and cloud. And you can expect some rain on Sunday with a high of 24. And up in Thompson, 12 right now, heading for a high of 24 today. With your highs over the weekend, also quite warm. 27 is your high tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. And you can expect potentially some showers, about a 40% chance of showers on Sunday with a high of 22. Sierra Sanders is in now with a look at your commute. Hello.
Hi, Corey. It's been pretty quiet on the commuter line this morning. Not too much going on out there, but if that does change and there is something that pops up on your drive, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Sierra. 7:36 right now, and as we've reported on CBC, finding work as a student can be hard these days. The latest data from Statistics Canada showed youth unemployment at just over 14%, which is notably higher than the pre-pandemic average of 10.8%. So with summer job season underway, the team at CBC Street Sense recently went to Wonderlead, a student leadership conference, to find out how these young people were thinking about work. And one of the hosts of Street Sense, Hannah Hormiada, spoke with CBC's Marcy Marcusa yesterday.
For being here. So what did you hear from students?
Okay, well, just to set the scene, we were at Wonderlead at Canada's Wonderland and surrounded by rides. So, every 2 seconds it was roller coaster, kids screaming. But it was fun, though. And honestly, just talking to students in that setting was the highlight. I was actually surprised by how strong their opinions are, even about the jobs they don't want.
So many kids, they try to be lifeguards, and you have to spend so much time through the training process. It's just not worth it, honestly. Even though the pay is decent, I just feel like it takes too much time.
Anything in appliances because I'm so bad at that. We have tech courses at our school and we get taught about the benefits of more hands-on jobs. And one of our teachers constantly reminds us that we could get hand arthritis, so I don't want that.
I was not thinking about hand arthritis in high school, so that was interesting to hear.
Yeah, no doubt. They sound pretty responsible, though. How old were these students?
So Gurmahar was the one talking about lifeguarding, and he's only 15, but most of the others were grade 11 and 12. I even did a quick poll in a group of 20 students, and 15 had summer jobs lined up.
Were you surprised by that number, especially, we just did a youth unemployment series here locally, and it's as high as it is right now. I mean, we mentioned those numbers are high.
Yeah, I mean, we were at a leadership conference, so these students are definitely a little extra motivated, but I found it kind of cool how they're just using their resources.
I'm going to be kind of like a bike instructor at this camp called Pedalheads. I found out while I was surfing on Indeed.
I actually asked my coach, hey, do you need any extra help? Now I help kids 4 to 8 years old learn basketball, play basketball.
So I'm going to be a cashier at a farmer's market called Hurley's, and I learned about it through my sibling who also worked there as a strawberry picker.
I'm working as a camp counselor. It is a neighborhood camp, so from ages 4 to 12, we run activities and different kinds of events with them.
So a lot of what they said tracks with first job tips that we actually share on Street Sense.
What are the tips?
Well, first, let me just say this is always easier said than done, but we encourage things like volunteering first because it could turn into work later. Also, network through family, friends, and coaches, and make job sites like Indeed work harder for you. Like Adelisa is the first student we just heard, and she filled out a questionnaire so jobs matching her interests would get emailed directly to her from Indeed.
Obviously, the students you spoke with are on top of things. Were you this strategic about jobs when you were in high school?
I would say not strategic. I was definitely resourceful. I did my co-op position at Shoppers Drug Mart, which ended up turning into a part-time job later. But COVID unfortunately put an end to that, which was fine. It wasn't my dream job per se, but it was something. So I asked students about this as well.
What's your dream summer job?
Probably like working with cats. I like cats.
Assistant maybe for a doctor, or being beside patients, something like that. When I grow older, I want to be a pharmacist too, so if I could get a pharmacy job, that would be lovely.
I have been seeing a lot of TikToks of like the Bev Cart girlies, and I really want to do that. Like, it seems so fun. Like, it seems like a great way to also like meet different people, and also the paycheck is pretty big, I'm pretty sure. So yeah.
And of course, TikTok gets a shout out.
You have to explain to the rest of us what exactly is, quote, Bev Cart girly. I think I know.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. It's basically just the people on golf courses that drive around with the beverage cart serving drinks to players, and it's become a whole aesthetic online.
I don't know how I feel about that, but I'll look. Did you talk to students who are still trying to figure out jobs?
Yeah, there was a split for sure. Some were saying it's summer, I want to hang out with my friends and just enjoy being free. And others want jobs but don't know how to break in yet. But overall, most of them seemed pretty optimistic that if they put in the work, they could land work.
After all the conversations that you had, Hannah, how do you, how are you leaving feeling this, feeling about, I guess, this generation of workers that you connected with?
Well, I can't speak for the whole generation, but I was pretty impressed by how intentional these students already are. I mean, they understand that finding a job takes huge effort, so they're using connections around them, and they're thinking about lifestyle, pay, flexibility, and saving up for post-secondary. And at the same time, some of them can afford to just have a high school summer, and that balance was actually cool to hear. And honestly, it just made me super nostalgic for high school and my first summer job. So that was pretty cool.
What was your first summer job in high school?
I was a cashier at Shoppers Drug Mart, which was really fun.
Oh, referring back to the Shoppers story. Yeah.
What was yours?
My first job was sampling, doing samples in stores. Like, when you see people like holding trays and saying, would you like to try this cracker in the grocery store? That was my first job.
That's awesome.
It was. It was a bit lonely.
Oh.
Thank you for this, Hannah. Appreciate your time. As I mentioned, we just did a series on youth unemployment here in Manitoba. So interesting to hear the perspectives across the country from other young workers.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
My first job was on a golf course, but I wasn't a Bev Cart girly, though. I was just digging a bunch of trenches. That was Hannah Hormiada, and you can catch her and her co-host at Street Sense on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. She was speaking with CBC's Marcy Marcusa there. That show, Street Sense, it helps students learn how to earn, spend, and shop smarter. Well, 7:43 right now, and still to come here this hour on the show. Some people in southern Manitoba say they're fed up with the amount of ticks they're seeing this year. We're going to hear from them coming up, and why an expert says the conditions are just right for a surge in ticks this year. So we're going to talk about the science behind why there are so many ticks. But next up here on the show, members of the federal opposition are coming out hot in response to Mark Carney's newly announced AI strategy. The Prime Minister says new plan titled AI for All will prioritize safety and ensure that tech works to create jobs for Canadians, not take them. But NDP MP Don Davies called the strategy reckless and inadequate. And Davies criticized the Liberal government, saying the strategy was rushed and done with limited consultation. Here's Davies speaking yesterday in Ottawa.
It leaves Canadians dangerously exposed. It's entitled AI for All. It's more like all in for AI. We know that this technology can produce benefits for Canadians, but it needs effective regulation and strong guardrails. Look, we know that AI is driving mass surveillance, it's facilitating fraud, it's threatening jobs. It consumes huge amounts of water and energy, and it targets the most vulnerable members in our society, including children and seniors. And yet, the Liberals rushed through a superficial and quick consultation, and now they're mouthing the lines of tech billionaires. Their message to CEOs is they can drive ahead today on AI, but for Canadians, the protection for them, well, that can wait. So we're calling on the Liberals to scrap this inadequate policy, and the NDP is calling for a humans first AI strategy, one that protects Canadian communities, Canadian jobs, Canadian small business, and Canadian natural resources.
What kind of privacy and safety guardrails do you think need to be included in a strategy like this, or included as we go forward?
Well, I'll give you an example. What about the scenario where a grandmother is sitting at home and the phone rings and there's an AI-generated tape of her granddaughter's voice saying that she's in prison in Mexico and the grandmother needs to wire money immediately? That's a very real example that I'm hearing from people that probably is here now. Where's the protection there? Where's the protection for the grandmother? We saw in the Tumbler Ridge incident a failure of ChatGPT, a failure of companies to regulate clear warning signs that had happened on AI. Where is the protection for young people? I don't see it in the strategy today. These are the kind of concerns that are being voiced by real people across this country, and they're not seeing it from this government being addressed or in the strategy today.
That was NDP MP Don Davies in Ottawa yesterday. The strategy promises at least $2 billion of new investments to achieve its aims. Well, it is 7:47 right now on Information Radio. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. And next up here on the show, it's a nuisance that crawls out every spring. We're talking about ticks. And some southern Manitoba residents feel like there's more this year. And CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco spoke to folks in Stony Mountain.
My name is Darlene Stewart. Terrible. Just terrible. I see them every day. I get them every day. My dog gets them every day. And there's nothing that can be done about them. You just have to live with them, sadly. You don't see them outside because they hide in the grass and they hide in the trees. But you go for a walk and you come in, and the dog brings them in sometimes, and sometimes they're dead if they bite her, sometimes they're not, and you find them crawling on the wall or on your body. I've had a few in my head. I have one right now that's really itchy. And and sometimes it's hard to see them because some of them are super tiny. Like lately, a lot of my son even said, lately all the baby ones are out. So when I do find a tick in my house, I have a little container of rubbing alcohol. So I've got my tweezers, and I get my tweezers, and I put them in here, and then you just watch them die, which is the best thing.
And you were telling me that container was different before we
arrived.
It
was. I mean, it was like literally half an hour before you got here, and this had at least 20 ticks in it over the past couple of weeks, and they were all dead. So I flushed them, because don't flush the live ticks down the toilet, what I've read. But the rubbing alcohol is what kills them within seconds.
Armaya Dunbar. For us, they're pretty bad because we've got bush area around. Until we put tick collars on the dog, we're usually pulling 3 or 4 a day. As soon as the snow is gone and we get one really good day, we end up with a herd of ticks.
Is that part of the life here country?
Yes. And if you're not ready for it, then don't move.
Have you noticed more this year than in past years?
No, this year isn't nearly as bad as years before.
About the amount of ticks they're seeing this year. The Manitoba government doesn't run a program that surveys its tick population, but a Winnipeg entomologist says their density goes up and down every spring. And this year, weather conditions have made it favorable for more of them to survive. Catherine Rochon is an associate professor of veterinary entomology at the University of Manitoba, and she joins us now. Hi there, Catherine.
Hello.
So how has the tick season been so far based on what you've seen?
Well, my data is based on the public submissions to etick.ca and also from, being outside. And there's quite a few ticks out there this year. It's, in my opinion, as a tick researcher, a good year. But I think most people would call it a bad year.
Yeah. So good year, you mean there's lots of tick. Good year to be a tick.
Yeah, exactly.
So how active are we talking, in comparison to say, I don't know if you have the past 5-10 years of data, how good for ticks is it this year or bad for us is it this year?
Yeah, so I'll even go on a shorter time scale, even because just to remind us just how we forget things. So compared to last year, we have more ticks that have been submitted to the eTick platform, about double it for this time of year. But we have fewer ticks by about 100 submissions compared to 2024. And so 2024 was another big year. And so that's what I mean by, those variations are normal. If you consider the life cycle of a tick, right? The adult ticks we see right now are 2 to 3 years old. And so there's a whole lot that can happen between when they come out of the egg 2 to 3 years ago, that can affect how many will survive to now, right? And so it's perfectly normal to see these variations. And some areas will have a lot of ticks this year and maybe not as many the next year, and then 50 kilometers later or further, it'll be different in the next year.
And the weather is a bit of a factor as well, of course, in the tick season. So why do weather conditions this year make for the what seems to be a busier tick season this year so far?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, we had a fairly, I'd say a fairly good winter. There's, enough snow to keep everything well insulated under the snow there. So even though we had some cold weather, it ticks over winter. So it wasn't a drastic winter so their survival was, potentially quite good. And then we didn't have a lot of extreme weather, right? We didn't have crazy flooding or anything like that. While, a lot of us will complain that it took a while for, spring to get here, it wasn't drastically cold or, nothing was extreme. And so, ticks do perfectly fine at 10 degrees. And when it's cloudy, they need some humidity. And we had some of that. And now it's very hot. Everybody's outside. Everything is moving around. And that's when they can get their host. So they're outside there too. They're enjoying the sunshine and all the people and dogs and other critters coming to them for a banquet.
So 2 types of main ticks here in the province. There's deer ticks, wood ticks. What's the ratio this year of how many wood ticks there are and how many deer ticks there are?
So there's pretty much everywhere in Manitoba, there's way more American dog ticks or wood ticks than black-legged ticks. Again, if I just look at the public data from etic.ca, as of yesterday, we had just over 400 submissions. 380 were wood ticks and 32 were black-legged ticks. Right. Now, this is not to say that it's always like a 10% kind of thing, but there's people will notice, and there's more wood ticks out there. Now, word of caution though, at this time of year and for the rest of June and all this, we now also see black-legged tick nymphs. And nymphs are much smaller, so people will have to start when they do their daily tick check, because everybody does a daily tick check, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so when you do your daily tick check, you now want to change a little bit your search image and not just look for something that's about the size of a flax seed, but something that's the size of a poppy seed. So think of your muffin or bagel, small little black seed on there. That's the size of a nymph. For black-legged ticks, and they are active right now, and they will continue to be.
And that's a little scary for looking through your own hair and stuff like that too, because that'd be hard to find if it's on your head.
It is hard to find. It's very important to check for children, especially because they don't necessarily have the same body awareness. But the good thing about the nymphs, if I can say so, it's a bit of strange wording maybe, but they are small, but so are their mouth parts. And so just by having your shower, and you don't need to scrub your skin off, just regular shower and regular, scrubbing and washing your hair. Research shows that is usually enough to remove a nymph that you've missed, right? That you've not seen. So regular showering, so your daily shower, when you do your tick check, you're going to be naked, looking at everywhere on your body. And then, it's easy, a quick shower. And there's actually research that shows that reduces the number of ticks that are attached. The important tick is, the one that can cause problems It's not the one you see, it's the one you miss.
And any indication of where most of these black-legged ticks or these nymphs have been found so far, where they're most concentrated in Manitoba?
Southern Manitoba is, I can't say one region or, more than another. It's just easier to say pretty much all of Southern Manitoba, you could find black-legged ticks there. Areas where there's more forest, like deciduous forests, those are good places where you have, I'm going to say oak trees, but it's not necessarily just oak, but that type of older forest where there's leaf litter and things are a bit more shaded, so it's a bit more humid. Black-legged ticks like that. It doesn't mean that it's only there, but those areas tend to have a little bit more just because the conditions are really good for their survival. And there's usually lots of the hosts that they like. So some of the small mammals and the deer and all of those animals kind of stay in those areas. But, if you get your voles and the deer in your backyard could be the place.
And finally here, I know, the province said they don't keep track of tick numbers. Do we need more surveillance, on an official level of ticks, you think?
Well, surveillance, active surveillance, so having people go out there and look for ticks is extremely expensive. And so what with the limited resources, where the province went is they're using etick.ca actually as their official passive surveillance. And so that relies on people from the public to submit the ticks that they find. So you take a picture, there's a website, but there's also an app, so it's quite easy. And you upload a picture, and then real people, for Manitoba, it's in my lab, but real people will identify it. And tell you what it is. And so if it is a black-legged tick, you also get information on, what to be careful of and things like that. And so that's called passive surveillance. There are biases and it's not ideal, but that platform is used by pretty much everybody in Canada. All the public health agencies are using etick throughout the country. Some places will have active surveillance on top. In Manitoba, with the resources they have, they decided to focus on patient care a little bit more than on the environment. As a researcher, of course, I will always advocate for active surveillance because that gives us the best quality information, and it also informs research. So we can see ahead, just at the leading edge, what's happening, so we can gather more information. I'll always advocate for more. But it is expensive, and it takes people on the ground. Yeah.
Well, Catherine, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
Catherine Rochon is an associate professor of veterinary entomology at the University of Manitoba. For more on the story, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Stay tuned here on Information Radio. Organized sports aren't just for the kids anymore. We're going to hear how social sports could bring a boost to your physical and mental health, and hear some stories from people who have really benefited from them. That's coming up after World Report. Stay tuned.
On Q. One of the biggest shows on TV right now is the HBO Max drama The Pit.
Baby Chinta.
Maybe you've seen it, and maybe you're convinced you're a real doctor now. You're going to hear from Catherine Lanassa, who plays charge nurse Dana Evans on that show, about how being on The Pit has truly changed her life.
Learned a long time ago. Quit feeling sorry for myself. Now come on.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It is a yellow 1970s camping trailer that drives around Manitoba, and its mission is to collect stories from people talking about how great their neighbors are, how a Winnipeg man is fighting social isolation and bad vibes. It's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm John Northcott. A blockbuster jobs report from Statistics Canada is changing the economic outlook this morning. The economy added a surprise 88,000 positions in May, blowing right past predictions of a minor increase. The massive surge, fueled by full-time positions, driving the country's unemployment rate down to 6.6%. The CBC's Peter Armstrong has the details.
This is a bit of a blockbuster turnaround for the Canadian jobs market, the first significant employment gain since November of 2025. We did have 4 straight months there that looked pretty ugly. We lost 112,000 jobs, but now, on a year-over-year basis, Canadian employers have added about 147,000 jobs just in the last 12 months. The details are pretty solid, too. It's not just the headline. These are mostly full-time jobs. They are mostly private sector jobs. They've come in Ontario, BC, and Alberta for the most part. The construction industry leading the charge. Mostly, though, if you zoom out, you see a picture of a pretty good surprise and something that can act as a bit of a counterweight to the negative GDP growth we saw to start this year. But as always, these numbers can be volatile, so take them with the requisite grain of salt. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
3 men extradited from Scotland will be in an Ontario court today for what's expected to be a resolution in the killing of an Owen Sound restaurant owner. Sharif Rahman died 3 years ago after chasing down customers who skipped out on their bill. Philip Lishanak reports.
I made tandoori chicken for them.
Adnan Hussein was a cook at the Curry House in downtown Owen Sound, about a 3-hour drive northwest of Toronto. He told CBC News that Sharif Rahman confronted 3 men who'd skipped out on their bill.
I saw Sharif was running behind them. He was able to stop one of them.
44-year-old Rahman died from his injuries from that confrontation. What's being described by the court as a resolution is expected today.
The accused were not from Owen Sound. Others brought violence to our community.
Owen Sound Mayor Ian Boddy praised the police for their work tracking down the 3 accused to Edinburgh, Scotland, and returning them to Ontario to face charges. 25-year-old Robert Evans was charged with manslaughter, while his father, Robert Busby Evans, and his uncle, Barry Evans, were charged as accessories. Boddy, who has a background in criminal law, expects some kind of plea deal.
We need to rely on the expertise of the court and be satisfied with whatever decision they make.
But he says whatever the outcome, the community is still reeling from the loss of Rahman nearly 3 years ago. Boddy says the Curry House continues to operate in Owen Sound and is run by Rahman's wife, who receives strong support from the community. Philip Lishanak, CBC News, Toronto.
A Canada-wide manhunt is underway for a Quebec man charged with first-degree murder. 33-year-old David Fauché is wanted by the RCMP for the 2023 killing of a man in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador. Police say Fauché is actively on the run and could be trying to reach Montreal or Mexico. He's believed to be driving a gray 2026 Chevy Silverado pickup truck with Quebec plates FTV 8960. If you see him, police say do not approach and call 911 right away. Alberta separatists are telling supporters that an independent province would mean dual citizenship and more options for travel. But legal experts say that is a myth. They warn that if Alberta leaves Canada, citizens could lose their Canadian passports and find themselves holding a document no other country recognizes. Ruksha Ali reports.
It would have to be Canada's decision.
That's Gerard Kennedy, a law professor at the University of Alberta. He says residents in a theoretical Republic of Alberta would not be entitled to Canadian citizenship.
It would be a political and moral decision to consent rather than a legal obligation.
But many separatists in Alberta are banking on Canada cutting a deal. The Alberta Prosperity Project is one of the leading separatist groups. On its website, it claims once a Canadian citizen, always a citizen, and that independent Albertans will get dual citizenship, giving separatists, quote, more options, not less.
A Pandora's box has been opened, and there's going to be a ton of major challenges.
University of Ottawa law professor Errol Mendez says if the October referendum passes and a clear majority eventually vote for Alberta separation, then potentially years-long negotiations would kick in.
There has to be a discussion on what happens to the military assets that Alberta has, which is Canadian. What happens to the national pension, which is now in the trillions of dollars?
And Mendez says while dual citizenship isn't a given, neither is other countries recognizing an Albertan passport, which could make it difficult for people to travel. Ruksha Ali, CBC News, Calgary.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is taking a big diplomatic gamble, bypassing Washington to appeal directly to Vladimir Putin. In an extraordinary open letter, Zelensky says Ukraine cannot wait around while the Trump administration is distracted by the war in Iran. He's calling for an immediate ceasefire and an all-for-all prisoner swap, challenging Putin to face him at a summit in a neutral country like Turkey or Switzerland. But it is an unusual diplomatic request, with Zelensky also taking direct aim at Putin's domestic failures and his age. Meanwhile, in Washington,
Let's vote. The ayes are 226. The nays are 195. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
with that vote, the U.S. House defied President Donald Trump to pass a massive Ukraine aid package. Nearly 20 Republicans broke ranks to vote with Democrats, bypassing their own leadership to pass a $9 billion package of direct aid and loans for Kyiv, while slapping heavy new sanctions on the Russian economy. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate has approved $70 billion to fund border security after an all-night standoff over a multi-billion-dollar payout fund for Donald Trump's allies. The bill secures long-delayed funding for ICE and the Border Patrol for the next 3 years. But Democrats are slamming the final package after Republicans blocked restrictions on an unrelated $1.8 billion settlement fund, potentially leaving the door open for those tax dollars to be used to compensate January 6th defendants. The Trump administration is taking direct aim at Cuba's political elite. Washington has slammed fresh asset freezes on Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel, his immediate family, and top members of the Castro dynasty. Speaking in the Oval Office, President Trump described the island as a completely non-functional.
Look, it's a failed nation. The country is starving, and it's got no energy, it's got no oil, it's got no money, it's got nothing. It's got a beautiful piece of land.
The economic penalties drastically expand the decades-old embargo. It follows an aggressive American fuel blockade launched earlier this year that has already choked off the island's energy grid. And finally, as the world is put on notice to prepare for El Niño, there is some rare good climate news this week. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says a devastating 2-year period of mass coral bleaching has ended. But as CBC Science reporter Anand Ram explains, scientists warn the relief may be short-lived.
Off Colombia's Caribbean coast, Yerson Granados ties tiny pieces of coral to a metal frame made of rebar. Hands that used to fish these waters now helping build artificial homes to bring them back. Coral reefs are a refuge above all else for fish, and we have to protect them. Starting in 2023, intense ocean heat caused coral reefs around the world to bleach, turning them a ghostly white, expelling vital microorganisms. The good news, scientists say, data shows that mass bleaching event finally ended last year.
I'm glad it's over. You know, this was the most spatially extensive bleaching event ever recorded.
Emily Darling is a coral scientist with the nonprofit Wildlife Conservation Society. She says bleaching isn't a death sentence, but with El Niño expected to warm the Pacific this summer, there's no time.
If we're entering an era of near annual bleaching, recovery windows are closing.
And there are serious costs to communities that depend on these stressed out corals. Rashid Sumaila is an ocean and economies expert with the University of British Columbia.
Once you impact the habitat, you impact the fish and the life in the ocean, it just carries through to all of us.
El Niño could bring bleaching heat to North Pacific, Florida, and Caribbean corals, but it's getting trickier to tell when bleaching events start and finish, especially as oceans absorb 90% of the excess heat that human emissions are trapping in the atmosphere. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. Recapping our top story, the economy added a staggering 88,000 jobs last night, completely shattering expectations. Economists had anticipated a minor gain of just 10,000 jobs. For news anytime, go to our website, cbcnews.ca. I'm John Northcott. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk, in for Marcy Marcusa. 15 right now at the Forks. We are heading for a high of 24 today with a mix of sun and cloud. No rain in the forecast, at least for here in Winnipeg. Coming up here on the show, organized sports aren't just for the kids anymore. We're going to hear how social sports could bring a boost to your physical and mental health, and hear what it's meant to some Winnipeggers. Also on the show, a bill cracking down on gender-based violence and deep fake pornography could soon become law. We're going to hear from the federal justice minister about what he had to say on Parliament Hill about it yesterday in his defense after a senator had some thoughts about it. That's coming up here on Information Radio. 8:11 right now. Let's check in with Heather Wells with a look at news headlines.
Good morning. Well, as you heard on World Report, the economy added a staggering 88,000 jobs last month, shattering job expectations. Economists anticipated a gain of just 10,000 positions. The extra jobs that were added successfully dragged down the national unemployment rate to 6.6%. Manitoba's unemployment rate, though, worsened, growing to 5.5% in May. It had been 5% the month before. And Wally Dowdrich says the Progressive Conservatives made up reasons to kick him out of a nomination race in a southwest Manitoba constituency. The former contender for the PC leadership hoped to run for the Tory nomination in Turtle Mountain, but this week, the party revoked his candidacy. We're going to hear his reaction in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, taking a look at your forecast here, as mentioned, 15 right now in Winnipeg, heading for a high of 24. Your weekend is going to be even hotter. 31 is the high on Saturday here in Winnipeg, and 32 on Sunday, with no immediate rain in the forecast for the city. But looking out to Brandon in the west, looks like there may be some more rain on the way. 13 right now in Brandon, heading for a high of 25. 30% chance of showers today. Tomorrow your high is 31. No rain in the forecast until overnight. You might get some showers. And then into Sunday, you can expect about a 30% chance of showers with a high of 31 as well. And then up in Thompson, you're sitting at 12 right now, heading for a high today of 24. And then on Saturday, your high will be 27 with a mix of sun and cloud. Then about a 40% chance of showers on Sunday with a high of 22. Let's check in now with Sierra Sanders, who's keeping an eye on your commute. Good morning.
Hi, Corey. It's been a very quiet morning on the commute, which to me sounds like things are moving very smoothly out there on your drive this morning. But we still have a little bit of time left in the show. So if that does change and something does pop up on your drive, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, here's a question for you to ponder. Have we become lonelier and lazier? According to StatsCan, more than 1 in 10 Canadians report that they often or always feel lonely. And Participation reports that less than half of Canadians are meeting their weekly recommended amount of physical activity. Combine the two facts, and it doesn't paint the healthiest picture. And CBC's Chloe Friesen has been looking into a potential solution for both problems and joining your local beer league, aka social sports. Hi.
Hey, Corey.
So just explain for us, what are social sports?
Excellent question. When we talk about social sports, we're talking about the informal, low-pressure activities that prioritize fun and camaraderie over hardcore competition. So we're talking about your beer leagues or your rec leagues. They focus on team sports like hockey, volleyball, soccer, basketball, curling, slow pitch, the list goes on and on. But if you're getting together with some buddies to have fun while playing a team sport, that is social sport.
And so social sports, they aren't new. So what makes them notable right now?
Well, according to the experts I talked to, we need physical activity now more than ever. According to the latest activity report card from Participation, only 46% of Canadian adults are reaching the recommended level of weekly activity, which is 150 minutes. And only 32% of adults took at least 7,500 steps per day, which falls within the physically active lifestyle category. Lee Vanderloo is the scientific director of Participation. She told me that while most Canadians are well aware of the benefits of being physically active, many of us lack the motivation to get active because it feels like a chore. Here's Lee.
It's this idea that if you're not having fun and you're not enjoying it, then why would you return to it? And when it comes to an activity or a behavior like physical activity, we want people to keep coming back. We want people to keep repeating it. And I think from a behavior change perspective is that we absolutely should be reaching for something that we enjoy.
Enter social sports. I wanted to put Lee's ideas to the test, so I took my recorder out to Wednesday night slow pitch. It's like baseball, but a little bit simpler. In full transparency, I play in this league myself, Corey. So before I warmed up, I found a player on a nearby diamond to talk to. Maggie Searcy is the captain of her team. What motivates you to come and do this?
Everybody here. They mainly do because I'm the captain. So I wouldn't be captaining if it wasn't for them.
What do you think you get from playing this sport with your friends?
Camaraderie. Just community. Half of my best friends I would never have met if it wasn't for baseball, and then meeting everybody else. Yeah, it's a communal thing for sure.
So what did you learn about, the mental health impacts of social sports?
For this question, I turned to someone who has been in the social sports world for over 3 decades. Christy Harold is the founder and CEO of Jam Sports. She described Jam to me as the big league of grassroots sports, organizing recreational sport leagues across Canada, including here in Winnipeg. They offer basketball, volleyball, soccer, curling, dodgeball, kickball, tennis, softball, the works. The social benefits of team sports have never been lost on her, but since Gen Z entered adulthood, she's noticing a larger impact.
You're getting the physical benefit of exercise, but you're getting a mental health benefit of connecting with friends in real life, not from behind a screen. This is not social media. You're really connecting, having some laughs while you're being physically active. This is a time where anxiety, loneliness, depression are through the roof. And so the benefits of social sports are the antidote to that.
Christy also mentioned to me that Jam Sports has facilitated thousands of long-lasting friendships and relationships, often acting as an unintentional matchmaker. Here's a story of an email she once received.
This was back in 1997. He emailed me and he said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know if you ever need a testimonial, here's mine. Thanks to Jam Sports, I don't sleep alone anymore." And he now sends me an email every 5 years or so with an updated family photo.
I can't. That's 1997. I can't imagine. I wonder how often that happens nowadays. Right?
Yeah.
So who might benefit most from social sports then?
Well, the simple answer is all of us. Here's Christy with Jam again.
This is not for athletes. Granted, we have some higher skill level, but we have sports where if you've never played the sport before in your life, everyone, once they try it, they come back and go, "Oh, I get it now." It's kind of like gym class, but more fun because you can go out for a beer afterwards or nachos with your friends,
But I also wanted to mention some research that came out of the University of Ottawa. Talia Rotondo is a PhD candidate in their School of Human Kinetics, and she's been studying how postpartum moms benefit from team sports. Talia told me that many postpartum parents are encouraged to exercise at home, go for walks, or do yoga, but those are typically solo activities.
Postpartum people are at high risk of isolation during the postpartum period. With isolation can come so many detriments to mental health, physical health, etc. In a few of my studies, moms would return to teams where there are or leagues where there are other moms in the league. So that was very meaningful to them to be in a space where other people are participating with the same sort of lived experience as them.
Multiple participants in Talia's study told her that taking time for team sports was an act of self-care and resistance against the expectation of being the, quote, perfect mother.
The participants shared sport helped them take time for themselves. And that was their way to reconnect with themselves and experience their identity that potentially exists within them on top of being a mom. And then some people will say, I'm never not a mom, but it's great to touch on my identity that isn't a mom.
These days, Talia's research is focused on how to remove the barriers that new moms face when trying to return to sport.
So what advice do people have for people who might want to try social sports for the first time?
So the biggest tip, Corey, that I heard was not to take the game, whatever you choose, too seriously. Most leagues out there have a range of participants, people from fresh out of high school to retirees. So nobody, hopefully, is going to judge you for how well you play or if your team wins or loses. Here's Maggie from Wednesday Night Slow Pitch again.
Don't just get discouraged if you don't play too well. Just keep going because you'll only get better.
Sage advice. Thanks, Chloe.
You're welcome, Corey.
CBC's Chloe Friesen.
Manitoba may have a reputation for being cold and flat, but our podcast isn't. I'm Marcy Marcusa, the warmest host on the prairies. Even when my podcast, This is Manitoba, is exploring some challenging issues. I'm never flat when it comes to holding our leaders to account. Some of those interviews have been called spicy. If you care about this province, check out This is Manitoba, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
8:20 right now here on Information Radio. And next up on the show, a bill cracking down on gender-based violence and deep fake pornography could soon become law. But before it goes to the House for a final vote, it has to be reviewed and approved by the Senate. The bill is extensive, and some senators are saying they need more time with it. But Justice Minister Sean Fraser has stressed the need for it to pass before Parliament's summer break. That prompted Conservative Senator Denise Batters to accuse Fraser of treating the Senate like, quote, a rubber stamp. Here's Sean Fraser speaking to reporters yesterday after the Senate meeting.
The crime that exists on the books today needed to be updated, so we were treating AI deepfakes on par with intimate images that were taken in the real world but shared without consent. There is a debate playing out. I don't want to prejudge what potential amendments the Senate may propose, but whether it would be more expansive to include the creation and not only the sharing of these images is something that I invite senators to consider, and will consider with an open mind should they choose to make such an amendment.
About what happened last week at the Senate. Senator Denise Batters said it was, you were treating the Senate like a rubber stamp by giving them basically 2 weeks to pass this bill forward. You mentioned all the different clauses, the different parts of it. Do you agree with that criticism that this is maybe too complex of a bill to get through the finish line in the 2 weeks we have before the summer recess?
I don't want to suggest to the Senate there's some preordained outcome here. We want to consider in good faith what amendments they may actually propose that they feel are necessary to the adoption of the bill. But I also want to impress upon them the urgency of moving in this particular down this particular path as quickly as we can. With enormous respect to the Senate, who I think could fairly say we want an opportunity to do our job. It is a difficult pill to swallow coming from somebody who belongs to the Conservative caucus, having watched their deliberate filibuster for months of the Justice Committee on the House side. When we discussed that filibuster at the time months ago, I personally raised with colleagues on the Justice Committee the need to get moving because they were in fact slowing down reforms on bail, on sentencing, on gender-based violence, on sexual exploitation. It's very clear that when I see members of the Conservative caucus say there's not enough time to deal with this, knowing that they wasted the time that they were given at the Justice Committee in the House of Commons, it is a difficult criticism to accept. Given what's playing out in our communities every single day, we can't afford a months-long delay to have these protections benefit victims. When the police are asking for it in the news, when judges are declaring the need for relief from the bench, it's incumbent, in my view, upon Parliament to take action, and to take action today. This bill has more than 80 substantive measures, all of which are extremely important. I cite the example of AI deepfakes, and not because it is the most important compared to these other important measures, but because the example has presented itself just days ago. If we wait a few more days, there will be other examples in these other policy areas, and we can prevent this harm from taking place in some instances, or potentially ensure that the criminal law has full force effect on the perpetrators of the crimes that may take place in the number of weeks ahead.
That was Justice Minister Sean Fraser speaking to reporters on Parliament Hill yesterday. He was taking questions about Bill C-16, which aims to strengthen gender-based violence laws. 8:24 right now here on Information Radio. Right now in Winnipeg, it is at 15 degrees, heading for a high today of 24. And just a traffic note for folks this weekend, if you're planning to hit the road, head downtown on Sunday, a reminder, it is the Pride Parade on Sunday, and it's going to start right at 11 o'clock at Memorial and St. Mary Avenue. It's going to run down Memorial and then turn east down Portage towards the Main Street until go all the way to Main Street, and then cross Main Street to head to end at the Forks. So there will be some traffic disruptions, particularly eastbound Portage that morning at 11, starting at 11 a.m. Until the parade ends later in the early afternoon or so. So heads up for that. And we do have some music actually now from one of the bands playing at Pride this year. The Haleys are taking the main stage, and they have new music they'll likely be bringing to the festival. So here it is now. This is the Haleys with their latest song. This one's called Paper Cut.
The post I liked in 2014. You're just the corners of my fitted sheet. You're the mosquito buzzing near my head. You're like the crumbs I find in my bed. You're like stepping on a Lego piece. You're like a broken record on repeat. I don't know why it bothers me. No, I shouldn't care. No, I shouldn't care. You're just a paper cut. A prick on my finger. So why the hell does it hurt so bad? You're just a coffee stain that's ruined my shirt, but I'm losing my mind. Yeah, it's gone. It's time. You're like the tag in the back of my shirt. You're like the dirty microwave at work. You're like the phone call that gets put on hold. You're like forgetting coffee till it's cold. You're like the broken zipper on my jeans. You're like the fingerprints on my screen. You're just a paper cut, a prick on my finger. So why the hell does it hurt so bad? You're just a coffee stain that's ruined my shirt, but I'm losing my mind. Yeah, it's gone this time. So much, Give me a Band-Aid and I'll fill a kiss. I don't think that I can take more of this. I need a doctor, 'cause I'm bleeding out. If I don't make it, burn his house down. You're just a paper cut, a prick on my finger. So why the hell does it hurt so bad? You're just a coffee stain that's ruined my shirt, but I'm losing my mind. Yeah, it's gone this time. You're just a paper cut. Got me losing my
That was Winnipeg band The Haleys with Paper Cut. They'll be playing at Winnipeg Pride on Sunday at 1:15. And then reminder that parade starts at 11. It's going to run down Memorial, then turn east down Portage, cross Main Street and end at the Forks. Well, Marjorie Dowhouse is here now, host of Radio Noon, to talk about the pretty fun call-in that's going on today. Hi.
Hi. Well, we are asking you, what makes your pet the best? Why? Well, because the Winnipeg Humane Society is running a campaign right now to celebrate pets out there. They want to hear your stories about your pets as part of a campaign that they're running right now. So we want to hear from you, and we're going to have the Winnipeg Humane Society on to join us later to talk about the campaign, but we want to know what makes your pet the best.
I like that there's a superlative there, so there's a chance of competition.
Yes.
So mine's the best. I'm going to start off. My pet, Giorgio Armiani, is the best. We adopted him in Newfoundland from the SPCA.
Aw.
He was a foster fail, so we fostered him. We fell in love, so we adopted him.
Mhm.
And he's the best because he's super cuddly and fluffy. And even when my kids are all up in his face, he just kind of just takes it. He's just like, they're obsessed with him. And he just kind of like, what's up, kiddos? Let's hang out.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I love that story about, what's his name? Giorgio Miar.
Giorgio Armiani. He's designer. Yeah. We call him Giorgio for short, or Georgie, but yeah.
I love it. Well, we want to hear your stories, so give us a call starting at 12:15 on Radio Noon today.
Thank you very much, Marjorie.
Thanks, Corey.
Time now for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 15 degrees. It's going to be a really nice day. Mix of sun and clouds, a seasonal high of 24, and then as we move towards the weekend, the heat turns back up, and we see highs in the low 30s. Well, we begin with some news, good news on the economic front. Statistics Canada has released its latest employment numbers this morning, showing jobs shot up by 88,000 in May. That is much more than the 10,000 predicted by economists. And it pushed the national employment rate down about a third of a percentage to 6.6%. Most of that job increase is in full-time work, boosted by a surge in construction. Now, Manitoba's unemployment rate worsened, growing to 5.5% in May. It had been 5% the month before. Manitoba's premier hopes a mobile provincial supervised drug consumption site eases Winnipeg's overdose crisis. It has intensified over the spring. The consumption site will open this month. Wab Canoe says several factors that contribute to the drug crisis have improved. 200 homeless people have been housed, and the province has opened more social housing. Canoe is open to new ideas to address the problem, but he won't consider providing a safe supply of drugs.
Whatever we do, I think, has to be done in a way that brings along broad public sentiment in our province so that we can make sure that effort is sustainable over the long term.
Canoe says the province will continue to target dealers who import toxic drugs to Manitoba. Wally Dowdrich says the Progressive Conservatives made up reasons to kick him out of a nomination race in a southwest Manitoba constituency. The former contender for the PC leadership had hoped to run for the Tory nomination in Turtle Mountain, but this week the party revoked his candidacy. The PCs cite three reasons: that Dowdrich made disparaging comments about current and former MLAs, used third-party contact lists, and refused to say he wouldn't pursue legal action against the party. But Dowdrich denies all the accusations.
They had no reason to not allow me to run other than the fact that they have a difference of opinion. That's their prerogative. I'm a conservative, and they're not.
Dowdrich believes he sold more memberships than his lone competitor in the race, Mark Custance, by a 4-1 margin. Custance is now expected to be the PC candidate in Turtle Mountain for the next Manitoba election. A judge has approved a proposed settlement in a class action lawsuit involving solitary confinement in Manitoba jails. The lawsuit alleges the province's use of segregation for both adults and youth was negligent and breached charter rights. The administrator for the class action says the proposed settlement fund was $129 million and could see awards starting at $3,000 for adults and $9,000 for youth. The judge approved the settlement agreement in a Winnipeg courtroom yesterday after hearing from people affected by that practice. Among them was a now 22-year-old who says what he experienced as a teen in custody will haunt him for the rest of his life. The class action administrator says the province agreed to resolve the case without a trial, but denies liability. Mark Carney is in Brampton, Ontario, at a grocery store this morning, marking the first payment of the new Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit. It is replacing the GST-HST credit, and while the name changes, most of the rules around the key benefit program stay the same. About 12 million low to middle income earners are eligible. Ottawa is giving a one-time GST top-up payment as part of a transition to this new benefit. And it was a Winnipegger for the win.
They score! Seth Jarvis quiets the critics and ignites the crowd.
That was the call on ESPN. Winnipeg's Seth Jarvis scoring on a power play in overtime, giving the Carolina Hurricanes the win against the Golden Knights last night. 4-3 was the final, and the Stanley Cup Final Series is now tied at 1 win apiece. That was Jarvis's first goal in this series. But on the other team, the Vegas Golden Knights, Mark Stone, also from Winnipeg, and Brett Howden from Oak Bank, both scored last night for Vegas. Game 3 goes tomorrow night in Las Vegas. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
So essentially, Manitoba is guaranteed to win the Stanley Cup.
Absolutely. It's coming here somehow.
Yeah, it's coming here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells at your CBC News Desk. Big thanks to everyone who helped on our shows this week. Abby Adiyemi, Sierra Sanders, Chidi Akuma, May McKillop, Marshall Hodgins, Jenica Sewell, Dylan Longhurst, Chloe Friesen, Sophia Peralta Baron, and Emily Enns. Our hosts, Nadia Kidwai, Marjorie Dowhouse, Faith Fundal, Julie Buckingham, and Marcy Marcusa, as well as our news team, Joni Nicolo, Meekin Ketchison, Aaron Broman, Darren Bernhardt, and Heather Wells, our videographer, Travis Golby, and our YouTube producer, Darren Morash. Nellie Gonzalez is the show producer of Current Affairs Unit, as well as Donna Carrero, and Robin Summerfield helped out this week as well. And Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio. We are in for a hot weekend, especially here in Winnipeg. 15 right now. It is going to be warm up to 24 today, but 31 is the high tomorrow, and 32 is the high on Sunday. So I imagine lots of folks probably heading to the beach. You might see me at the beach at Spruce Woods. I'm going to be going camping this weekend. We'll maybe see you out there. As for the commute, been quiet overall today. Thanks for everyone who's called in, though, throughout the week. Write this number down, 204-788-3093, if you do want to make any calls in the future. Keep cool out there. I'm Corey Funk, in today for Marcy Marcusa. Hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. The Current is next.